Shuji, that was the only name of the warrior who had no surname. This word was all he possessed in this cruel world, the sole possession of a miserable existence. But no mortal ever honored him with this name. In his childhood years, when he was just a helpless puppy, he was called nothing but trash. When the boy matured, he was nicknamed Weed, and later a complete brood. Crossing the threshold of adult life, the spearman was deservedly given even darker names. He was called the poisonous snake spear, and later the demon with the spear. The warrior rose to the highest peak of martial art and crushed all opponents on his bloody path. At some point, he was even honored with a formidable title, King of the Spear. The only clothing covering his mutilated body was worn-out rags. His food was only a miserable portion of potatoes per day. The only refuge this cursed one could call home remained the battlefield. When the spearman stepped onto another battlefield, the enemies began whispering among themselves, realizing they faced face-to-face with the demon himself, the one whom rumor called the King of the Spear. Despite the opponent's foolish reputation, the captain of the enemy army continued to curse loudly, urging his fighters to a furious assault. After all, there was only one warrior against them. Given their overwhelming numerical superiority, they would surely be able to hit this upstart and then completely defeat him. However, the commander, who shouted louder than everyone else, fell first. The hero pierced his head through with a single lightning-fast strike. Immediately after such a terrible massacre, the frightened soldiers began throwing their spears at the demon, desperately trying to hit him somehow. For the warrior twisted away from all their attacks with inhuman agility. The spearman pondered, was he born for battle, or did fate force him to master this deadly art? But despite everything, the main thing remained unchanged. He had taken countless lives, wielding only a spear in his bloodied hands. Although the warrior survived even after this uneven battle, the insults and dissatisfaction of the dead souls continued to whisper in his exhausted mind. In the end, the one who was always mocked, called trash, perished lying on the battlefield. Such was to be his end. However, some mistake of fate occurred, because of which he did not vanish into oblivion. Instead of oblivion, the spearman was reborn, and this trash, over whom they had mocked all his life, opened his eyes again. At first, the warrior decided that he was reborn in the body of some infant, but soon he noticed a gilded mirror nearby. Looking at it, the young man realized he looked like a teenager about the age when he still ran around as a boy being carried. While the spearman examined his reflection, he heard loud screams and the clinking of metal. A fight broke out. The wagoners defended the cargo at any cost, so as not to allow the robbers to take even one item. A battle flared up between the forest bandits and the escort bureau, Roaring Tiger. Of course, it was hard for the warrior to believe that he was back on the battlefield immediately after reincarnation. At that very moment, one of the bandits sneaked up on him. The robber did not understand what a brat like Shuji was doing here, because the boy did not resemble anyone from the guards. So the scoundrel decided that he was his accomplice. When the bandit came up close, the spearman was able to examine the opponent. These scoundrels hid in the thickets of the forest to rob and kill people. But from the way the bandit's eyes twitched and how his body was tense like a string, the warrior realized most bandits were ordinary amateurs. At that moment, the forest scoundrel himself made it clear it did not matter whether the boy was an assistant or someone from the guards. He was still part of the escort, so he had to die. For this, the bandit swung his spear. But as Shuji had predicted, the opponent's movement turned out to be too predictable. In the end, the youth easily intercepted the bandit's spear, then pierced the throat of this forest scoundrel with it. Of course, the warrior no longer had those legendary battle feats of the past behind him. But he still had his deadly martial art. This was more than enough for clashes with such petty scoundrels. Although everyone despised the martial arts technique he possessed, even calling it demonic, now the spearman had no choice. Eventually, he returned to the past and had to survive. While the young man was thinking about this, an archer rushed at him and shot an arrow at point-blank range. Obviously, the shooter thought he had hit the boy right in the head and rejoiced prematurely. But to the fierce, shocked surprise of the forest bandit, the warrior not only dodged, he immediately counterattacked with a spear and pierced him through. Of course, the spearman expected an ambush, but not only forest bandits could resort to such tactics. If you don't make sure the enemy is really dead, you can easily disappear. Shudzi himself had narrowly escaped death on the battlefield more than once, so he was used to checking everything thoroughly. After that, he impaled 2 corpses on his spear, and finally its weight was felt as it should be. Only now could the fighter properly consider the situation. The Roaring Tiger Escort Bureau, a name that awakened memories of old times in him. After this, shocking the whole crowd, the spearman burst right into the center of the battlefield. Obviously, no one understood what was wrong with this boy, since he was carrying two bloodied corpses on his spear behind his back. Of course, the bandit leader wanted to find out what had happened and who this crazy boy was. Moving forward, the chief introduced himself to the young man. He was the leader of the forest robbers. The spearman eagerly awaited the clash, while the enemy was preparing to wipe the confident smirk off the boy's face. The leader lunged at the young man, but despite the weight of the spear pierced with bodies, the warrior effortlessly dodged the strike. Of course, the leader was angered that the youth only knew one thing: to dodge like a rat. But at that moment, the bandit noticed the bodies of his subordinates' spearmen had cut them down during the attack as they flew past. The hero admitted that the leader's physical strength was truly impressive, but it seemed that was all he possessed. And in the very next moment, the warrior cut this man's body in half, demonstrating what a real attack was. In the end, the spearman felled the leader with a single blow and made the rest of the bandits understand. Before them stood a true monster. While everyone whispered behind his back, the hero noted with dissatisfaction that his spear turned out to be too light. In the end, he came up with nothing better than to impale the enemy's head on the shaft to make the weapon heavier. Thus, the warrior scared everyone to death. The bandits immediately surrendered. In the same way that blood and demon met on the battlefield, time rolled back decades. And again, the demon with the spear returned to the same mountain. While the hero was chasing away the bandits, the escort bureau was catching and killing them, not letting anyone escape. Of course, every warrior believed that fate was on their side. That is why they began to pull the fight to their side and sought to finish off the robbers as quickly as possible. At that moment, another of the famous bandits burst onto the battlefield. He clearly surpassed all previous opponents in strength. He was pushing the knights aside and not letting them kill his friends. The robber realized they simply did not have the power to defeat him, because they were on completely different levels of strength. At that moment, the spearmen heard the voices of the dead souls. They recognized their former leader and rejoiced that he had come to protect them. The fighter was not surprised that this guy was the leader of the robber fortress. He was head and shoulders above the usual riffraff. The hero decided to fulfill the wishes of the souls and take this man with him before his existence was completely consumed. While the leader was fighting with all his might, the souls also called the warrior by his name. When the spearman called the robber, he became insanely angry. He did not understand who dared to address him so contemptuously. And the very next moment, he had to urgently block the attack of the young man who rushed at him with incredible speed. Of course, the frightened man did not understand who this kid was, who had such monstrous strength and easily knocked him down. When the robber saw 3 corpses behind the boy, he decided that he was a mad freak who skewered people on his spear. At that moment, the leader heard the cries of souls who could not accept that this man was the only one among them who remained alive, so the dead called him to themselves. Undoubtedly, the robber cried out in terror, realizing that he had apparently encountered the demon himself. He begged the heavens to save him. But his pleas did not interest him at all. He killed the man with a single blow. They say that saying a person's name 3 times meant sending their soul to the underworld. The spearman had not used this ability for a long time, so he even felt a strange, trembling sensation of nostalgia. He remembered his past. Back then, he was a novice who was assigned the hardest reconnaissance work. Then they told him if he joined the army, he would not go hungry, but it seems these bastards deceived him. If to summarize, the fact that he was now in the army was no different from the period when he was an ordinary slave. But suddenly, the young man felt something behind his back, as if someone was standing there and watching him closely. He did not know what it was, maybe some predator or even a ghost, but the warrior clearly understood he must not turn around. There was what he was not supposed to see. And Shuji had no intention of dying in such a godforsaken place. Therefore, he swore to himself never to look back. And then some voice decided to find out what exactly the boy was trying to achieve by so stubbornly clinging to life. His existence was no better than that of a bug, so this man was extremely curious. Why was the boy taking such a risk? Perhaps if he turned around, it would be his chance to change his miserable fate. The spearman really turned around to find out how much he could trust the words of this man. Captivated by the courage of the hero who asked this question, the stranger decided to learn his name. Only the youth named him, and the old man asked again, once more, and again, until Shuji pronounced his name 3 times. Immediately after that, the man grabbed him by the neck and lifted him high above the ground. The hero, of course, was amazed that the old man had covered the entire distance between them in one breath. He did not even notice how the man moved. Then the stranger told the boy that if you want to kill someone, you must say his name 3 times. This person became a teacher to the hero. She also endowed him with demonic power. She was the embodiment of evil in the world of martial arts. She was called the Bloody Demon. In the memory of this, the spearman did not let go of the brutal fight and continued it relentlessly. But it seemed strange to him that now his mind was clearer than ever. The demonic power that the teacher gave him was incomplete. Seeds of demonic power rooted in his dantian were supposed to sprout in the bones and cloud the mind. But now the warrior felt rested. Something had clearly changed. So he closed his eyes and, gathering himself, tried to understand what exactly it was. And finally, the young man felt the difference between the current and past acquisition of demonic power in his former life path. The thing was, he had completely forgotten about it. When he joined the army, still in childhood, he learned a breathing technique, the flame of reason. This meant that it allowed him to maintain consciousness and clarity of thought. What incredible happiness! In his past life, the teacher warned the boy, until he fully mastered the demonic power, it would be difficult for him to hold onto his own mind. Therefore, the spearman was very curious about what the mentor would say if he found out that there was a way to preserve sanity. By this time, the warrior had completely dealt with the bandits. A lady approached him with the rest of the guards. They thanked Shuji for saving them from this dangerous situation. Moreover, the girl was impressed by the strength of this youth. He stood far away, yet his pressure felt colossal. Besides, he was destroying the bandits one by one, frighteningly easily. They could not waste such a talent. Although the girl did not know why such a gifted man served as a convoy guard in their bureau, she still dared to ask the fighter to continue lending them his strength. Obviously, she was impressed when the hero easily refused without hesitation. He immediately understood. She had nothing left to say, so he was about to leave, but she could not allow such a person to disappear from there. If this boy joined them, from then on all valuable cargo would be in complete absolute safety. Therefore, the girl handed him a golden plaque from the Tigranea Yama sect and asked the hero to take it with him. As the boy could already know, it was the Tigranea Yama sect that headed the Punishment Enforcement Bureau, a prestigious clan from Anho. If the spearman brought this token, he would be accepted as an honored guest. It was a sincere reward from the woman as a sign of gratitude for help. Looking at the plaque, the warrior began to recall that he remembered the Tigranea Yama sect. According to his memories, it was known for its honest and conscientious activities. But after a few years, they would disappear without a trace, and it would become a tragedy for the entire martial arts world. Eventually, the hero took the plaque from the lady's hands. After that, bowing, she explained that they would return to their transportation duties, and when everything was finished, they would come to greet the warrior already within the sect's walls. The boy agreed. Moreover, he decided to take a horse from these people. Of course, the lady was not against giving up the horse, but she asked the hero to choose another steed. This one had too wild a temper, so it was used only for carrying loads. But somehow, the usually unruly horse easily submitted under the spearman. And the horse was so troubled by fear that it even relieved itself while on the move. The lady was surprised. This young lad was a real monster at such an age. He rode so skillfully. And the other guards even mocked that the girl had fallen in love at first sight. And this boy was clearly to her taste strong, handsome, and her peer. Of course, the lady was extremely embarrassed by how the warrior mocked her, and he even dared to speak like that about their benefactor. She made her fighters understand that she had seen much more than they had. His spear handling technique was special. Of course, everyone thought that he might be the son of the legendary spearman from a noble family. However, this was not noble martial art, it was a military technique of spear mastery, and the level of skill and insight clearly exceeded the boy's age. Apparently, this boy was the son of an influential military family who set out on the path of a warrior after completing his training. And this man risked his life to save them. If he learns about the crisis in the Tiger's Den sect, he will never leave it unattended. Therefore, she prayed that this hero would tear the sect from the claws of the Black Dao clan and protect them. At the same time, the spearman scolded his horse, warning if it got angry again, he would cut it to pieces. The horse no longer dared to behave that way. As soon as the horse calmed down, the warrior began to ponder about the sect itself. Does it still exist? Moreover, he was extremely curious about how the boy named Ko Aiko was doing. Ko Aiko is a young man whom the hero met after being drafted into the army. the very one with whom he formed his first relationship in a past life. Back then, everyone mocked the spearman, showing that this newcomer was catastrophically mistaken. He believed that he could eat without first offering tribute to the elders. Of course, Shuji immediately made it clear that he was hearing about such a thing for the first time. Therefore, the commander explained, recruits must give their dinner to the elders. That is the rule. If the boy did not want to be beaten, he had to remember this well. At that moment, another boy appeared, impressed by the insolence of those who mocked and ridiculed. Moreover, he realized if Shuji had recently arrived, then he was the next newcomer, and this also meant that, most likely, the local degenerates would now take his food. Of course, he was struck by the insolence of this boy and immediately decided to decorate his rotten face a little. However, Ko-Aiko immediately threw his potato right into the man's face, then offered to fill his stomach with it. But the martial arts master could not promise that the opponent would still have teeth after this fight. As soon as the fight began, Ko-Aiko unleashed a whole avalanche of accurate blows right to the insolent man's face. After all these received wounds, he fell to his knees and raised his head high from pain. The so-called brother himself asked that next time the man should not be shy. If he didn't finish eating, he could come back to him. The warrior would definitely feed him again and knock out all his teeth down to the last one. Of course, the whole crowd immediately scattered away, and Shuji made the boy understand that he should not have interfered in this quarrel. But the comrade simply threw half a potato to the spearman, showing that it was better to eat if he wanted to survive. Thus the heroes met. He was the first and only comrade of the warrior, so to speak, a so-called brother. Then, when the young man told the spearman with the potato, he decided to find out the boy's name. And so one day, when these two were desperately fighting for survival, a bloody demon appeared before them. Ko-Aiko saw how the sinister old man was holding the hero over the abyss, and the so-called brother immediately ordered, let him release Shuji, and even threatened to launch a flare. The spearman, of course, demanded that his friend run away as quickly as possible and not look back. But the comrade stood his ground and demanded that the bloody demon release the boy. He really did release him, only Ko-Aiko did not specify that he needed to be lowered to the ground, so the hero flew off the cliff. Of course, the frightened boy immediately screamed in panic and shouted, not believing what his own eyes saw. And the bloody demon only laughed at the youth's discontent, although the old man gave him what he so desperately asked for. Obviously, the named brother, enraged, immediately grabbed the bomb and was about to throw it right at the old man. But fortunately, the warrior stopped him in time, shouted and warned that he was fine. Ko-Aiko did not need to run away. The mentor explained to these two that he did not intend to kill them for now, so it was better for them to listen to the proposal he had for these young men. If they bring him the herb that will heal his inner wounds, the old man will instead give them the power to survive. After that, the teacher decided to find out what the answer of these two would be. The boys looked at each other, but they knew they had no second choice. Eventually, both agreed to the strange proposal of this old man. As soon as it happened, the mentor left them and returned to the dark cave, marveling at the worthy gleam in the eyes of these two boys. After this, the bloody demon also said that there are creatures known as unbridled demons. These are human souls devoured by tigers, and they fell into demonic decay. These are corrupted souls that become subservient. They sacrifice other souls to elevate the spiritual rank of their master. The demonic technique developed by him followed the same principle. It absorbed the images of the dead to elevate its spiritual rank, and the technique was called the art of the unrestrained demon. This magic had 3 stages: the compression stage, the tempering stage, the transcendence stage. Each had 10 levels. Upon reaching the compression stage, a person could release demonic energy like steam. At the tempering stage, blood turned into deadly poisonous venom. When demonic energy was released, it seemed as if blood was whipping from the body. As for reaching the stage of transcendence, the teacher himself trampled the entire world, rising only to the 4th level within this stage, and concepts such as good, evil, and even the demonic lost all meaning for him. Therefore, the mentor wanted the students to seal his instructions in their hearts and go to the battlefield, killing relentlessly. Only then will they gain the strength to change their fate. And so both named brothers fought back to back to survive against all odds. After this, the young men returned to the teacher Aganand. The time came for their final agreement. The grass they were supposed to bring this time was the century-old snow ginseng. The spearmen immediately agreed to do it, but Ko-Aiko for some reason strangely objected. The comrade knew that 100 years of snow ginseng was beyond their capabilities. Therefore, at first, he asked the teacher to help them open the front meridians. The named brother explained to the dissatisfied old man that if they use the herbs they currently have to open these meridians, they will be able to obtain the last ingredient. Regarding the shortage of herbs, they will be gathered and the supplies replenished later. After thinking a little, teacher, it seems he agreed. And finally, Ko-Aiko sent Shuji first to open the meridians. The comrade explained to the young man that he would go first, open the meridians, and while the process was ongoing, he himself would gather more herbs and then open his own meridians. The hero himself at this time would also go to gather herbs. As is known, going second is always harder, so this was an agreement beneficial to both of them. After thinking a little, the dissatisfied warrior still agreed. Some more time passed and the spearman, covered in arrows, returned back to the mountain. The young man hoped that the herbs he had gathered would be enough, and now together with his brother and the master, everything would be fine. However, when the hero returned, he saw his teacher was already lying with his head cut off. After this, the fighter noticed his own brother. He was sitting behind the back of the dead old man. When the spearman rushed to him, Ko-Aiko had already lost so much blood that he began to sink to the ground. The hero immediately rushed to the comrade, grabbed the named brother in his arms to understand what had happened. Eventually, the dying man explained that this old man initially did not intend to leave them alive, so he had to act before they were killed. The warrior already understood. It seemed that this was why Ko-Aiko ordered him to open the meridians first and go gather herbs. The meridians of the named brother were destroyed and the demonic energy was completely exhausted. The comrade had planned mutual killing from the very beginning. When the hero cried, Ko-Aiko asked him to wipe his tears. After all, killing a half-dead old man was a trifle. The dying man decided to ask the guard if he guessed the exact reason why Shuji would remain alive. The reason was simple. The spear-bearer was a warrior of the escort bureau, Roaring Tiger. In fact, Ko-Aiko was the last living member of the destroyed sect Tiger's Pit. The hero once recalled that he worked briefly as a warrior of the escort bureau and said that the head and mistress of the sect were good people. It was then that everything began. The adopted brother took Shuji as family. After all, the spear-bearer was the only one who spoke warmly about his parents. Ko-Aiko did not regret at all that she met the hero. Therefore, the comrade hoped very much, if Shuji got a chance, he would avenge him. For this reason, the warrior in the present time swore to do everything possible so that this situation would never arise. First, the spear holder must prevent the destruction of the clan. Earlier, the hero saved the escort bureau and their financial support, so perhaps the future has already begun to change. All this still did not reach the required level. So when the young man reached the sect's walls and saw a boy passing by, he immediately jumped off the horse. He felt some dissatisfaction and cast a glance at the hero, but the spearman beckoned the man closer to ask him a question. The passerby, of course, immediately flared up with anger. He decided that this brat did not understand at all how to behave with older people, because he appeared from nowhere and called him so contemptuously. But the hero grabbed the man by the head and ordered, "Let him be silent and answer his question." Very soon the disobedient passerby was subdued, and the warrior looked around. After all, he had not been in this city for a long time. Obviously, the small estate where the spearman stopped was the legendary sect Tigrianya Yama. After that, the young man inquired about the name of the sect leader and about his wife. They were exactly the same as in the past life. But the name of their son was different. He was not called Ko-Aiko. Of course, Shuji was in shock, so he immediately ordered to name the name of the descendant of this family. The man stumbled and the hero even blushed. He was afraid that returning to the past had changed the reality he knew. And everything else matched his past life, so the spearman got angry. He decided that this man was deceiving him. The fighter explained that if he now went to the Tigrianya Yama sect and found someone named Ko-Aiko there, the passerby would be in big trouble. But it turned out, inside the sect walls there was indeed a person with that name. The catch was that the hero asked whether the sect leader and he with his wife had a son named Ko-Aiko. The man did not understand why the warrior was turning the young lady into a man. After all, the head of the Tiger's Pit sect had no sons, only one daughter, and it was this lady Ko-Aiko who was a woman. Shuji thought about it for a long time, yet he still considered it complete nonsense, and Ko-Aiko simply could not be a woman. At the very least, if he showed the golden token, he could enter the Tiger's Pit sect and see everything for himself. But if it was really so, then the fact that Ko-Aiko was a woman would hinder his further actions. So there must be some other way. At that moment, one of the workers jumped out from behind the gates. Immediately seeing the hero, the worker cursed foully, not understanding how the boy dared to show up at work as if nothing had happened just now. After that, he grabbed the youth by the scruff and dragged him into the depths of the sect, muttering that all sorts of riffraff were being hired for work. The spearman should have cleaned up the horse manure long ago, but instead he ran away. Of course, Shuji understood. Some misunderstanding had occurred, but in fact, in his case, everything turned out for the best. At that time, the boy introduced himself as the stable manager of the Great Tiger's Pit sect and explained to the hero his job to clean manure and feed the horses. The overseer considered this job the best possible option for a homeless person. The leader explained all other details to the boy 2 days ago. Obviously, it happened that the warrior was not here at that moment. He knew nothing. The servant decided that the hero might have a bad memory, so the boy rereads to the elder, or maybe this child is just foolish. The overseer explained to the spearman once again, those responsible for the stables are important people needed by the sect. Moreover, the head of the sect took pity on the hero, a homeless boy, and took him in. Therefore, the boy must check that he does his job well. The manager continued to rage and shout at Shuj until he looked at the horse that loudly neighed behind his back. After that, the steed reared up and broke through the stall where it had been standing all this time. Of course, the spearman was shocked. He did not understand why the horse suddenly went mad. The warrior did not even figure out where it came from. Others who watched the unruly little horse understood such a reaction was to be expected from a first-class horse. The young master paid too much for this steed, so much gold that one could buy a mansion, and still, it was not easy to handle this beast. Moreover, the young master did not care at all that the stable manager was injured by a horse because the heir considered these people no better than dogs. He only decided to give them some feed before leaving to somewhat sweeten such misfortune. Immediately, the workers grabbed the manager, dragged him away, cursing this pervert from the Zhao clan estate, not understanding what he was looking for here today. The spearman felt this pair from his past life. The heir was the initiator of the fall of the sect Tigranea Yama in those times. At that moment, the young master himself was fiercely outraged. His clothes stank of horse manure. The heir felt it was enough just to be in this stable and he was already dirty, so he decided to leave. But suddenly the sect leader appeared. He heard the commotion and apparently did not expect at all that the young Mr. Zhao would visit them. Therefore, the stern old man Ko Jenin decided to inquire what had brought the young nobleman here. Of course, the young lord immediately darted off and hurried to bow in order to greet the leader Ko Jenin, and explained that he had come for only one reason: he wanted to visit his future fiancée. Of course, the old man immediately flared up with anger because if it were about Ko Aiko, the head did not remember approving such a marriage. But still, the boy decided to hold the wedding as soon as he turned 16 years old. The heir reminded their wedding is to take place in a year. This is already whispered throughout the district. Even the village children have started singing songs in honor of this celebration. Of course, Ko Jenin immediately realized it was the young lord who spread the rumor to ruin the future of his daughter. And the Baron only shrugged, considering Ko Jenin a real joker. And if their Zhao clan had so far yielded to the Tiger Mountain sect, they would not have gone so far as to marry their daughter. At that moment, when the father was already on the edge, ready to explode with anger, Lady Ko Aiko herself appeared. The girl made it clear to the persistent young man, if those rumors were really a senseless coincidence, then the heir must stop bothering her. Instead, he should find another woman. Of course, the young lord immediately made the beauty understand that the rumors surrounding them could be extremely dangerous. But the girl saw no point in continuing their conversation. She was not going to marry either this young man or anyone from the Zhao clan. Therefore, she demanded that he get lost. The young Baron himself was amazed that the lady behaved like a powerful person. Although the Tiger Mountain sect was almost bankrupt, they were as arrogant as ever. After that, the heir decided to return to the original plans. After all, they had only glanced here on the way to the city. For today, their visit was already over. However, the entourage on the road did not calm down. It kept grinding rumors and was convinced that the lady was even more beautiful than they said. It was precisely because of this that the young Master Zhao was struck by her beauty. People say that she can captivate an entire nation with her beauty, and that is not even an exaggeration. But as is known, a beautiful woman who has no power or money is destined for tragedy. The master believed that this girl was too beautiful to be the daughter of the sect of Tigranea Yama, and she must curse her misfortune that she was born here. And she was incredibly lucky, such a scoundrel as he took notice of her. The heir will help this poor girl. After this, the young gentleman mounted the horse and was about to set off for the city as quickly as possible. But unfortunately, the steed did not move from the spitete, simply froze. Obviously, the assistant also decided that the horse was a bit unwell. However, at that moment the horse began to foam at the mouth, then collapsed to the ground. Of course, no one understood what happened to the horse. Why did the steed suddenly die? At that very moment, the hero held in his hands the organs he had snatched using the technique of fox bones. The spearman, who was a fox, carved out almost the entire liver and left no traces, so no one will find out why the horse suddenly died. But despite everything, this young lord infuriated the warrior. Because of him and his clan, these terrible events happened with Tiger's Pit. Ko Aiko once said that the sect's downfall was caused by a power struggle in the Zhao clan estate. This man pulled strings from the shadows, and most likely the girl suspected this too. That is why she considered her beauty a curse. Now the hero began to understand why the sworn brother burned his face with fire in a past life. The spearman decided not to delay and to take revenge for his comrade. From this moment, the warrior will finally begin to act. The events moved to the province of Anho City, in the Neimatsu prefecture. The young man walked through a district where the noise and quarrels of drunkards were constant. Someone was drinking to complete unconsciousness, and some wife was driving her drunken husband away. And so, among all these houses, the hero reached a store that sold agricultural tools. The spearman had not been here for a very long time, since the times of his past life. When the warrior entered, there was a man sitting on the floor drinking alcohol. The young man introduced himself, but it seemed the blacksmith did not know anyone by that name, so he asked the lad to go somewhere else. However, the hero knew perfectly well that the master no longer worked but still came to him. The warrior wanted him to make a hammer. It had to be made 17 sun in length and 4 sun in circumference, and the top of the head had to be specific. It was equally important to consider that the weight should not exceed 10 dan, which greatly surprised the blacksmith. Of course, the craftsman tried to explain to the boy that he would not be able to drive nails with this hammer, but this hammer was needed by the spearman not at all for driving nails. A double wrapping of 18.5 sun using crocodile leather was also required, and the warrior needed a well-forged weapon, something heavy. Of course, the master immediately decided to find out what the hero preferred: sword, axe, or spear. As soon as the youth named the spear, the craftsman immediately showed the best weapon he had. Sharpening its blade would take a whole day. And the warrior was completely satisfied with this. However, the spearman also needed some small, sharp weapon. The blacksmith immediately broke the box on which the hero was sitting. Inside was a whole bunch of iron spikes. Of course, seeing that they were all of excellent quality, the warrior decided to buy them all. The master found out where to deliver the best, but the hero promised to come himself and pick them up. Although the craftsman saw that the young man was all tense, he still warned, such an amount of equipment will not be cheap. And the debt collector, as if nothing had happened, ordered the man to name his price. Then the old man, with sadness, told that 3 days ago his daughter died. The blacksmith wanted to find out if there was any way to bring her back to life. At that very moment, the craftsman touched the hero but immediately realized this was a living man. He smelled so strongly of blood that the master decided he was facing a ghost, which is why he asked for such a price. The old man thought about nothing, just wanted the young man to kill everyone who destroyed his daughter instead of payment. The cult Chior Noi Dao is responsible for the murder of his daughter. Of course, the hero immediately heard this, turned around, and walked away ready to get down to business. The blacksmith only halfway warned there were 4 of these people. They called themselves the Elite 4 of Black Dao. The craftsman hoped the warrior correctly heard the names of his enemies. But there was no need to name the enemy again. The spearman was going to slaughter everyone anyway because he needed to avenge Ko Aiko. In the end, when they were already leaving, the boy decided to find out if the man happened to have worked clothes and poison. Of course, the blacksmith was shocked, as if a master craftsman did not trade such things. But the old man turned out to have everything necessary, both appropriate clothes and even a bottle of poison. The skin belonged to a bear that killed 74 people. In the jar was a deadly poison obtained from the Mao tribe. Although the master did not check whether the poison was real or not, the hero immediately began to open the bottle. The poison really smelled terribly, that was all, so the warrior quickly realized the blacksmith had deceived him. And yet the spearman decided to take this poison. It was not as good as the Mao poison, but it still had to be useful. After that, the young man warned that he would take the entire order and all the goods tomorrow. But just before leaving, the hero noticed human bones. They were lying near the door. As it turned out, the blacksmith had previously used these bones when he slaughtered his domestic livestock. The warrior asked the man to lend them to him until the order was ready. After that, calmly taking everything necessary, he disappeared completely. The craftsman, however, was convinced this boy was extremely eccentric and still could not believe that he was alive, not a ghost. But that changed nothing. The main thing was that he had to avenge his daughter. The old man's life was the price for her and far too small. After all, the blacksmith was already on his last breath, so as soon as he made everything necessary for the hero, he would surely die very soon. The young man himself reached the main gates of the Black Dao sect. And finally, the guards on duty there noticed a silhouette approaching from the darkness. They immediately hurried to explain to the boy that they were in the middle of an important meeting, and beyond their boundaries passage was forbidden. The guards also saw the bones in the youth's hand, but the man did not have time to be surprised as the hero had already struck him in the head with those bones. Of course, everyone was stunned. No one understood who this boy was and what he was holding in his hands. Only when they saw that these were horse bones, it was already too late. And the bones, indeed, turned out to be very strong and quite useful in battle. After such trash, the spearman was thrown just outside the sect's walls. He recalled that then they allowed more than half of them to escape, and their counterattack after that took too many lives. Thanks to this, the warrior knew exactly how these guys acted. This time no one will be allowed to reach the very end. The young man did as he promised, slowly, stealthily, dealing with them one by one. After some time, the rest of the fighters, hearing a strange noise, decided to go out and check. When they saw the boy with the bloody bone, it was hard to believe that all this commotion was caused by him. The warriors were angry that he had interrupted their peaceful sleep. They also explained that their sect leader was currently at a meeting with a guest, so they decided to deal with the boy themselves. Looking at these four, the hero realized they were somewhere between third and second class. It seemed to be the elite Black Dao quartet. Of course, the fighters were surprised that the spearman called them so lightly, but the next moment the first struck. For that, the man received a blow right to his manhood. While Tot groaned, the hero rushed at the others. To the second of them, the warrior gouged out his eyes. At the third, he threw the bone so accurately that his entire face turned into mush, after which the young man's body was pressed into the ground. And the man, who was now infertile, was still writhing on the ground, trying to overcome the pain. But as soon as he noticed the hero, he immediately rushed at him to make him suffer just as he had just suffered. The spearman was surprised. The man who always took things from others was now, when they decided to rob them, so dissatisfied. The warrior broke a vase and cut the man's face with shards. He immediately fell to his knees, trying to wipe his eyes from the small fragments. And the hero warned that he came here not only for things, but to steal their souls, and of course, everyone was terrified by the power of this boy. Even in their sect, no one fought as brutally and with a horse bone as a weapon. Therefore, it was obvious a real monster had come to them. From just a glance at the boy, the bald man, who seemed to be the oldest of all, screamed fearfully like a girl. And the hero cold-bloodedly attacked him with a blow straight to the stomach. Eventually, the bloodied warrior fell to the ground and, with the weight of his body, broke a huge hole in the wall. All he wanted to find out was who sent this boy and who he was in general. However, the spearman calmly explained he came here on the blacksmith's orders. This was the last thing the man learned before death. The hero tasted the promise and took care of the elite quartet of the Black Dao. This should have been enough to pay the blacksmith for his work. At the same time, the head of the sect was discussing that their mission had failed. The Lord was furious and the young lord as well. If they managed to disguise the Black Dao sect as forest bandits and repel the attack of the escort bureau Roaring Tiger, then they could get both the stolen cargo and the monetary reward from the Zhao clan. But the idiots ruined everything. The leader of the sect, Chiornoi Dao, of course, was horrified by what he heard. A member of the Zhao family explained, the ambush was uncovered, the trap failed, and they lost people. Now they couldn't even pay tribute to the evil alliance. They needed to come up with what to do in case a demonic debt collector appeared. And the chief clearly understood that the situation was getting out of his control. They sent enough people to destroy the escort of the Roaring Tiger. They could not even imagine that it would be them who would be destroyed instead. No one returned alive. That is why they did not know what had happened. Swordsman Zhao was convinced from the very beginning someone from the Elite Four of the Black Dao should have been sent. But the leader had no idea that things would go so far. If they had been told earlier how strong the guards of the sect Tigranea Yama were, they would never have gotten involved in this altercation. The swordsman was in shock. The head of Black Dao tried to shift all the blame onto them. The scoundrel decided to clarify, if Black Dao messes up again, they will all become dead men. If the Roaring Tiger Escort Agency does not fail the transportation task, the Tiger Pit sect will not be in a dead end. Then the master's plan for marriage will not come true, and their snot-nosed heir will not calm down until he gets that girl. However, the leader could no longer listen to all this tension. Therefore, he literally barked piercingly that he understood his task. At that moment, both froze when they heard a loud noise. This noise came from the entrance, which was supposed to be guarded by the Elite Four. A hero appeared who was just passing by the meeting room. As soon as the warrior entered inside, he immediately threw 4 severed heads of the Elite Dao Quartet. Obviously, 2 people here were horrified, deciding that an orthodox sect had sent some master here. When the spearmen began to approach them, the man was the first to shout, pleading earnestly for him not to interfere. He called himself a member of the Zhao clan, which had no connection to the Black Dao and came here only for negotiations. The hero felt it, then bit his lip hard enough to draw blood and spat blood right in the brat's face. At that very moment, he tried to explain that he would extend a helping hand if the spearmen came from the Orthodox Union to wipe Black Dao off the face of the earth. But after the spit, he recoiled in fear, not understanding why the warrior treated him that way. After all, he had nothing to do with those scoundrels at all. At that very moment, the clan representative felt a terrible pain that twisted his entire face. Then the hero recalled the teacher's words, those who possess the higher demonic art are called demon slayers. The blood of demon slayers is a deadly poison for martial arts masters. Of course, it was not yet as deadly as the poison of a true demon, but it still burned as if stung by ground chili pepper. Right now, the man had no idea what was happening to his body and why he felt so bad. The impudent one randomly tried to attack, but the spearman easily dodged every strike. The fighter saw the skill of this artist was first class, yet still not at the level of the Elite Four fighters. Eventually, the hero unleashed his demonic art, and both in the room immediately recognized it. Then they realized the visitor was not a member of the Orthodox faction, but a true mad demon. The spearman, as befits a mad demon, attacked the member of the Zhao clan without any remorse. In the end, from a single blow of beastly strength, his head exploded into a real meat mash. As is known, the demonic path is an art and even a being, a creature that, overcoming ideological and ethical boundaries, crossed the line between orthodox and unorthodox sects. They are the embodiment of evil, the only enemy that the entire world of arts must destroy, and one of these monsters has already appeared in the Black Dao sect. Demon users are wild beasts. Until they reach a certain level, all they know how to do is kill. Fortunately, while Shuji was distracted by a boy from the Zhao clan, the leader could slip away and contact the Evil Alliance. If that doesn't work, he'll have to run to the Military Alliance. However, the leader didn't manage to. The hero stopped him exactly, called out to a man by name he knew him well. Of course, the leader was stunned. After mastering demonic arts, Shuji remained completely sane. Apparently, at such a young age, he was already a master of the highest level. Moreover, it was clear that the spearman fully controlled his demonic energy. Right here, he fell to his knees, begging the hero to spare him, and if he did, the leader was ready for anything. Today was the deadline for paying tribute to the Evil Alliance. If anything happened, his head would be cut off. Then the noble lord could also suffer. Shuji honestly was impressed by the leader's submission. It seemed he knew much more about demons than one would expect. Eventually, the fighter made a demand. The man must give up his martial arts. If he refuses this deal, he will be killed by the hero here. Clearly, the leader was well aware. Abandoning his martial arts would mean condemning himself to death. In the end, he had no choice but to try to strike back. The spearman knew perfectly well that the man was nothing more than a coward who only knew how to talk. The leader attacked, but he only managed to slightly graze the youth's head. He felt the energy coming from Shuji. The chief realized he was still not a master of the highest level. An ordinary secondary warrior who dared to deceive him, and that was extremely brave on his part. The hero only barely smiled, amazed at the simplicity of this clown. Only his simplicity made the spearman's job easier, because the fighter in any case sought to put an end to the Black Dao. At that moment, the leader felt something strange, as if in the last strike a trick was played specifically against him. Shuji thanked the man because under normal circumstances it would have been extremely difficult to deal with him. But the man himself misunderstood everything, and this significantly simplified the task. At that moment, souls had already begun to envelop the leader, those who desired the man to die along with them. These were the souls of the Tao Four. Of course, the leader immediately tried to cut them apart, pushing them away from himself. While he was fighting these demons, the hero got a great opportunity to attack. The leader quickly realized the hero had sharp and precise movements like an assassin, and at the same time with the endurance of a true warrior. These are movements that cannot be predicted. They were created to destroy the enemy under any circumstances. The spearman was literally like a demon on the battlefield. In the end, the last blow landed exactly on the leader's chin. The guide rushed away, and at that moment, a whole pile of papers flew off the table, scattering everywhere. Meanwhile, the hero grabbed one of them and examined it. It said that the leader kidnaps ordinary women and sells them to brothels, then extorts money from them to expand the Black Dao sect to such proportions. The leader even issued debts to the escort bureau, Roaring Tiger. The Ottoman immediately burst into tears and began apologizing to the mighty warrior for his wrongdoing, swearing, if the hero spared him, he would never do anything bad again. But the spearman wanted to know only one thing: how many people had begged the man like that to save their lives. Asking about this, the warrior quietly began pouring burning oil on the man directly from the lamp. When his clothes caught fire, the man swore he would do anything to somehow atone for his guilt. But the hero decided only killing could even slightly ease the reproaches of the escort bureau, Roaring Tiger. When the spearman said this, the leader finally realized Shuji was the cause of all the recent troubles, because of which he could not set up the Tiger's Pit clan. Eventually, one more soul joined the hero's collection. Everything was just as calm. He looked one last time at the charred corpse and prepared to leave. He understood that this leader run like the one from the Zhao clan was truly something. At that very moment, a whole crowd of warriors gathered outside the door, eager for revenge. When the main hero stands before them, they will be shocked. Could it be that all this bloody massacre was arranged by some youth? The young man himself, glancing at the number of brave ones, realized the night promised to be long and exhausting. In the morning, rumors spread throughout the city about what happened to Black Dao. The entire sect was wiped off the face of the earth and their estate turned into ashes. The residents rejoiced, believing that these villains received their deserved death. The members of the Tiger's Pit sect were especially happy. They had suffered a lot at the hands of these scoundrels. As is known, Black Dao lent money to Tiger's Pit at huge interest rates, and then their leaders kept appearing in the sect, causing disorder and committing lawlessness. But thanks to everything that happened, the debts turned into nothing, and Tiger's Pit came out profitable. Everyone was incredibly curious who was the warrior who won the victory. He became the true hero of the entire province. But at that very moment, the stable manager did not forget to reprimand the newcomer. Our main hero was resting instead of properly cleaning the horse manure. When the overseer approached the young man, he was filled with rage. The ward's face showed that he was having some problems with his instructions. Shutzi, to be honest, the manager's behavior was already quite annoying. The young warrior was even about to show his golden token, but he changed his mind. It was better not to attract attention now until he settled scores with the Zhao clan. At that time, the manager was already threatening the young man with his fists, saying that if he did not start obeying him, the conversation would go very differently. But at that very moment, the overseer was sharply distracted, hearing a familiar voice behind his back. It was the same noble person who asked the senior comrades to stop mocking the recruit. Of course, the one who came did not understand the traditions very well, but believed that newcomers deserved some attention from the veterans. It was Lady Ko Aiko, but in the hero's mind he saw her quite differently. The manager apologized to the noble lady, but explained that this boy absolutely did not obey any command. But she saw nothing strange here. Shutzi was still a child, and probably taking on such work for the first time, so he needed to be treated with patience. And just as the steward dared to recall that the main character was nothing more than a vagabond, she reminded with annoyance, even a chance touch of sleeves can turn out to be fate. Therefore, every acquaintance should be valued. Life is too unpredictable. Shutzi and the steward may meet again somewhere far from here and even become a family. Many pondered the words of the noble lady, not even knowing what to say. The girl herself addressed the newcomer and asked, "Inform her if anyone continues to humiliate him." The boy was shocked. The girl's face turned out to be completely different from how he remembered it. But even despite this, she had eyes exactly the same as that time. The main character agreed, but on the condition that the girl would also turn to him if anyone dared to hurt her. The lady herself froze in surprise, while the stable manager could not understand which madman dared to speak like that to the young lady. But she only smiled, promising that she would do so if the need arose. Our hero returned home. There awaited all the prepared firearms. Now he avenged those who died in the escort bureau, as well as the blacksmith. All that remained for him was to seize the killers of the named brother from a past life. Thus the young man reached all the way to the estate of the Zhao clan. With a lightning-fast movement, he flew over the walls, remaining unnoticed by the guards. One of the patrolmen heard some strange noise, but it was already too late. The main hero instantly killed him. Moreover, he dragged the body around the corner to avoid raising any suspicions. The warrior also took the guard's uniform from the dead man. Now he completely blended in with the crowd. As the young man passed by as if making a round, he heard the maids whispering that the security had been strengthened that night. After the entire Black Dao was destroyed in one night, this was a completely natural precaution. At the same time, our hero noticed 3 more guards nearby. He took a small iron dart and with impeccable accuracy threw it straight at one of the fighters. When the iron pierced his head, he immediately got distracted to pull out this suspicious object. At that very moment, the main hero pounced on him before he could raise the alarm because of the spikes. Of course, his comrade immediately noticed that the boy had collapsed to the ground. The guard decided to find out what had happened, whether he had fallen asleep on duty. While he was speaking, he did not notice at all that poison had already been mixed into his bread. The guard quickly finished his food and then set off to deal with the junior comrade. Only then did he finally see his body was profusely bleeding from the inside from injuries after poisoning. Eventually, the guard fell to the ground and began convulsing. This was immediately noticed by others. Of course, as soon as the commotion about the poison arose, the guards immediately fixed their gaze on the kitchen staff. There could be spies there. All the gates were also closed to make sure no one would break out from here. Our hero examined his weapon. The blacksmith turned out to be the same skilled master as before, and this pleased the boy very much. Moreover, now that the equipment had already been checked, he could make a serious visit. Everything necessary for the Zhao clan to disappear that night was with him. At that time, the guards were talking that because of the incident with the Black Dao, they now had to stand guard on every floor without any rest. They considered it a waste of time, but as soon as these words were spoken, our hero burst in through the window. The guards immediately took him for a hired assassin. But they didn't even manage to draw their swords. One attack was enough for the main hero to take down 3 at once. Of course, the rest immediately heard the noise and rushed to check. While the young man was climbing up, he came across another guard who decided to ask about the guys on duty on the 4th floor. What was that sound? Since their master had already gone to sleep, everyone was supposed to keep quiet. The guard asked Shutsuji to return to his post and tell everyone to be quieter. But he noticed the main hero was wielding a spear, not a sword. By the time he noticed, it was already too late. Shutsuji rushed forward and attacked him, stabbing his chest. The other 2 guards realized that a hired assassin had come to them. But our hero dealt with them without any problems. He impaled one on the spear and used his hammer against the other. After that, the rest of the guards heard the noise too, so they immediately rushed at the enemy. They didn't understand how he got through the outer guard and what the rest were doing, and now the uninvited guest was already so close to the master. But they didn't get far. The main hero scattered metal spikes which they stepped on. While the guards were holding their legs, the young man effortlessly killed them using the spear and hammer. At that very moment, he heard the voice of the master, and in it was truly a terrible inner power. It was obvious Zhao, the head of the family, was on a completely different level than the head of the Black Dao. Stepping forward, the elder noticed that appearing uninvited was extremely rude. Basic manners must always be observed, even by killers. Our hero did not feel nervous. He was only glad that he finally met a person who had killed many times for personal gain and sent Ko Aiko straight to the underworld. The old man himself, as if nothing had happened, decided to find out what brought the boy here at such a late hour. The young man, as if nothing had happened, decided to investigate whether the man before him was the same Zhao Yushi, the clan leader. Of course, the elder was angered by the fact that this impudent fellow did not watch his language at all, and he even decided to ask where such a bold lad came from, because no matter how you look at it, it did not seem that he was from any sect. So the patriarch assumed that it could be someone from the Valley of Doom, the Society of the Path of Excellence, or even the Black Sands. Shuzi, without hiding, introduced himself as a member of the Tiger Pit, and he also noticed the old man's energy flow was extremely unusual, distorted, and extraordinarily focused. Obviously, their fight would by no means be easy. The head of the family himself found it hard to believe that a disciple of the Tiger Pit sect leader had appeared before him. He could not imagine that the person had raised such a tiger as our hero, so the elder decided to find out how exactly Shuzi was connected with these people. The young man calmly and evenly introduced himself as a guest of their family. At first he wanted to call himself a warrior servant, but he actually worked as a groom, so he named that position. A contemptuous laugh burst from the head. He immediately realized the main character came here clearly not just by chance. There was no point in guessing whom he belonged to. The boy himself rushed into the tiger's lair. The right thing to do was simply to kill him without unnecessary words. Our hero did not panic, he only barely smiled, understanding that even meeting this person in person already sounded a bit unreal. In his past life path, this elder was calmly living out his years. Aiko had to swallow tears, never managing to take revenge with his own hands. And now this life is different, and the young man was not going to miss the chance to avenge his friend right here and right now. When their weapons clashed, the old man felt a tremor. He could not defeat the boy with a single blow. For a moment, he even thought that the boy had used magic. For some reason, the patriarch felt in the young man the inner strength of the Zhao clan's martial art. Our hero only smiled, suggesting the elder find out for himself the reason why he had this strange feeling. In fact, his spiritual title was the 9th level of the compression step. He was already on the same level as this old man, a master of the highest class. The decisive factor in this duel will be the gap between the person living second and the person living first, the difference in experience. Eventually, both warriors launched an attack. But the clan leader was confident. Despite the main hero's good skills, the guy would never defeat him at this level. And considering that the elder possessed the power of fire, he also caused problems for the young man, because if even one spark hit his eyes, then he would not escape trouble. But suddenly our hero raised his zen to such a level that these sparks, although hitting his eyes, bounced off harmlessly. Of course, the old man was shocked by this. He couldn't even retreat properly, and the youth struck his throat, slashing it. Looking at the wound on his neck, the patriarch realized the boy was much more terrifying than he had assumed. Fortunately, his head did not fly off after one blow. But the elder was so close to stopping the opponent's stomach and turning his insides out. Shutzi could not deny this. The enemy's attacks really had a large radius of action, and his movements were like those of a battle-hardened veteran. Finding a chance for victory was incredibly difficult. Eventually, the youth tried to distract the man by throwing a throwing weapon. The elder was surprised that the main hero even knew how to use these little things. And when he saw the hammer flying at his head, he realized the boy was not lacking in stubbornness. Now he really wanted to know who had raised that youth. So if he managed to win now and surrendered, the elder agreed to take him into his vassals. Of course, it was a vile sentence. The patriarch hid behind these words, but was already preparing for the next attack. At that moment, he went on the offensive, and his movements were so swift that our hero barely managed to defend himself. At some point, the elder managed to pierce the youth's chest because he stumbled over the corpse of one of the soldiers. The leader was quite surprised that Shutzi had the courage not even to cry out after such a wound. This boy was not at all like the foolish son of the leader. His own son, even from a small cut on his finger, immediately ended up bedridden. Because of this, the elder decided such a clumsy man needs a strong wife. He would do anything to see his grandson's face while alive. The man thought as if he knew how much time he had left to live. At the same time, our hero grabbed the opponent's blade with such force that he could not even pull it out of his hand. No matter how strong a grip a person has, holding a sword in such a position was impossible. The elder quickly realized apparently the boy was doing everything to hold the blade with his own chest. This was truly reckless madness. Perhaps the boy even deliberately exposed his weakness, thus luring him right into a trap. Our hero decided to tell the elder the truth, how many years he had left to live. Immediately after that, he pronounced his name for the first time, and the patriarch felt a terrifying pressure on his own body. His whole body told him he must immediately flee from this fear. When the boy pronounced his name a second time, the old man ran back and forth, sharp in a fever, to snatch his sword and increase the distance. At that very moment, the young man said his name for the last time, and demonic souls stretched their claws toward the patriarch to take the old man with them to the other world. No matter how much he screamed, he was completely engulfed by the demonic illusion. Because of this, he dropped his sword. And the main hero took this opportunity to pierce his heart. The blade tore right between the ribs. The dying man wanted to know what illusion Shuji used, what kind of murderous intention it was, and how this brat, such a young man, could have such an aura. Our hero smiled, looking at the old man who had survived many battles in his life. But compared to what the main hero had experienced, it was nothing more than an organized duel. And the boy had gone through a fight between soldiers, a fight to the death. Considering the war the young man had fallen into, how brutally he fought to survive, everything the old man had lived through was nothing more than child's play. After that, our hero finally finished off the old man, and all the dying man begged for on his last breath was that the hero not kill his son. But Shuji clearly understood. This man demanded the impossible, and the young man was by no means going to fulfill it. But still, this did not mean that the patriarch would never see the face of his grandson. After the murder, the old man's soul tore away from the body and sat next to one of the souls following the main hero. They were all laughing. Our hero felt a pleasant scent behind him, and finally the boy saw a pot demonic souls gathered around it. There sat hugging and hiding a young master, whose soul Shutsuji had come for. He screamed desperately, demanding someone help, and that the main hero not come closer. But the young man was not going to spare this person, because so many people had to go through hell because of this degenerate's desire. He grabbed him by the hair, looking surprised at the snot-nosed kid. How did he still have the strength to scream so loudly? He was born into a wealthy family with money and power, and considered himself the hero of this world. In that case, Shutsuji decided to make him the star of the show, a very tempting offer. That night, it was the son of the Zhao family who was the main hero. When the long night ended, posters were hung all over the province. Their content said the Orthodox sect united with the Black Dao sect to gain unfair advantage, and someone punished them on behalf of the victims. Eventually, both organizations were destroyed one by one. A mysterious avenger appeared and killed them all. Besides rumors, people understood this was for the best, because with such monsters who dared to attack all the members of Tiger's Pit, it was finally over. But everyone was still curious, who could have dealt with them with such cruelty? After all, they were not ordinary opponents. The stable master had already heard rumors from the woman who worked as a maid in the Zhao estate. From what became known, the mysterious master said the name of the head of the Zhao family 3 times before sending him to the other world. Of course, everyone was terrified. After all, this valiant warrior turned out to be like a dark reaper with a scythe, calling the victim's name 3 times before execution. But the maid said as soon as the main hero said the patriarch's name 3 times, he got so scared that he began to sob. It seemed he was thrown into the underworld after the name was spoken 3 times. Everyone could only hope that no one would appear in Tiger's Pit with such intentions. At that moment, one of the servants raised a commotion so that everyone would greet the guests. At that time, the lady was thinking about the mysterious avenger who destroyed everyone from Black Dao and the Zhao clan estate. Even if they were terrible people, rejoicing in someone else's misfortune turned out to be wrong. She was extremely curious who was this avenger. Even if it was a ghost, she was insanely eager to find out why he only did what benefited Tiger's Pit. She even thought that it might be the same man the escort leader wrote about in the last message. She said that it was precisely because of one warrior that they failed to protect the supplies from the attack of the forest bandits. She gave him her golden token and advised him to visit Tiger Pit, asking to receive him warmly. But since that letter, no guest with a golden tag has appeared. At that moment, the girl, completely absorbed in her thoughts, did not notice where exactly she had ended up. It was truly a beautiful view of the lake, which she gladly looked at. After that, she decided to ask the guide where he had learned that she had a weakness for lakes, since she could not remember ever having mentioned it. Next to her walked Shutsuji, who calmly mentioned that the lady had mentioned it somewhere. While she calculated when she managed to tell this, our hero recalled his past life. Every time she was upset and her thoughts got jumbled, she always sat by the lake. Then the young man similarly took out the green powder and the flint to ignite it. These were special scents that repelled insects, so they immediately flew away. The girl was extremely surprised. After all, she liked lakes, but insects always caused her problems. And Shutsuji turned out to be very attentive, at least for a beginner. She was very curious, was he just as responsible at his previous job? Our hero calmly explained, a warrior dies for the one who recognizes his worth. To those who treated him like family, he himself responded as to family. After these words, the lady understood that probably the young man had his own reasons to behave that way, so she decided not to poke her nose into other people's business. But she could confidently state, as long as he is in the tiger's pit sect, they are his family. As soon as he uttered these words, the main hero instantly sank into memories of his past life. Then the girl decided to tell the young man why she had left him alive. Because he was a warrior of the escort bureau Roaring Tiger, and she considered his parents good people. It was from that moment that Shutsuji began to perceive the girl as his family. At that moment, the stable manager ran up to them, distracting them, and reported to the lady that the escort had finally returned. She immediately jumped forward and explained, "Tonight they have a banquet," so she asked the boy to come and take his place. Our hero smiled, gazing into the distance, then calmly shifted his eyes to the lake. After some time, evening came, and everyone drank and celebrated for the head of the escort, the heroine of the journey who saved everyone. The leader raised the cup and asked the warriors to drink and eat as much as their souls desired. Everything around praised the sect of the tiger's pit. Our hero calmly sat at his table. However, the manager and the others did not let him rest properly. They thought he considered himself too highly, as if better than others just because he accompanied the young lady. But was such a thing allowed to anyone except the old guard? They warned if this brat continued to allow himself such behavior, he would be left without food. However, they quickly fell behind the boy as soon as the young lady noticed, and came to read the boys a lecture for mocking Shutsi. Of course, they immediately began to justify themselves, saying that no one was actually mocking. They brought him some food so that he could fill his stomach with them. The lady knew perfectly well that this was a lie and took it upon herself to feed our hero, reminding him that she had asked to be reported if anyone mocked him. It was clearly visible on the boy that he had not eaten properly for the last few days, and probably he constantly received too little food. Therefore, he should tell her about these problems. At that moment, the leader hastily called his daughter to the table and asked her to come over. And the girl immediately said goodbye to the main hero so that he could eat his fill at today's celebration. As soon as she left, the grooms immediately decided to ask how Shutsi managed to win the favor of the young lady, because to them he was just a child and all his goodness boiled down only to a cute face. Moreover, they understood, since the lady cared so much about him, they really had to feed him. Right there, the stable manager angrily grabbed a piece of food and threw it with all his might at the young man. But even this sudden attack could not catch the agile hero. He dodged in time. Immediately, everyone got angry at how carelessly he behaved, so they took spoons and tried in various ways to splash him with food to punish his disgusting behavior. But he dodged each time and caught the meat midair as soon as it flew at him. At that moment, the head of the family thanked the head of security for the successful completion of the journey. Now finally, everyone could rest a little. Moreover, he swore on his honor that he would take full responsibility for the families of those who died on the trip. The girl politely declined all these praises, understanding that she had done no more than fulfill her duty. At that moment, a young lady approached to personally offer the lady a drink and to drink in gratitude for her successful expedition. Moreover, she decided to inquire about that guest with the golden token who was mentioned in the letter. However, the lady immediately realized she had seen him nowhere. She decided that he never reached Tiger's Pit, and unfortunately that was true. If it had been otherwise, they would have met him as an honored guest. It was not easy for the head of the escort to accept this, but she was not surprised. After all, that boy looked like a true avenger with a spear in his hands. Despite his young age, he showed tremendous strength to destroy the bandits of the Green Forest. In fact, everyone already understood that those people were from the Black Dao sect, and although the woman wanted to thank that child once more, unfortunately, she could not. Of course, if she could get such a master as a subordinate, it would greatly strengthen Tiger Pit, and her assistants would never have to die again. Seeing her distress, the young lady immediately set about calming the girl. She had already done a great deal for the Tiger Pit sect, so she suggested washing away all her reproaches and worries with a drink. Moreover, she showed the girl that thanks to her persistent work, many people could smile now. And she really understood. Both her subordinates and she herself were now fighting to have such an everyday world. And at that very moment she froze, just noticing our hero. He was being constantly harassed by the grooms. She immediately understood it was the very same avenger, but Shutsuji gave her a sign so that the identity would not be revealed. At that very moment, the boy himself understood the time had not yet come. It was too early to take out his golden token, so he had to remain silent and keep his tongue behind his teeth. By this time, the stable boys were already too tired even to throw food to the young man, so, breathing heavily, they asked him to just stand quietly. And when even these pleas did not work on him, all three rushed to catch him. Then suddenly a man spoke to them. He demanded that the three sit quietly while he eats. Of course, they both made him understand. This man must be grateful to the good head of the sect who allowed such a worthless person as him to enter this celebration, and he definitely had no right to appear. The guest himself was shocked by the audacity of this trio and even wanted to teach them a lesson. But our hero very quickly came to the defense of these three. Moreover, he made it clear that it was better not to get involved in the conflict. The fighter quickly realized Shuxi had guessed his intentions, and given the speed of movements, the young man had a brilliant future. Therefore, as he was leaving, he did not forget to warn the trio. It was better for them to live the rest of their lives thanks to the main hero because they were saved only thanks to his reaction. Of course, the leader decided that this was pure lies and called this man a real madman. At that moment, this man stepped forward, calling everyone's attention. He thanked everyone for the invitation to such a wonderful banquet. However, unfortunately, he found nothing for himself except cold sake, so he decided to pour everyone a cup of hot sake. Immediately after that, he placed 2 fingers on the table in the head of the house where his family was feasting. Right after that, the table began to heat up, as did all the dishes that were on it. The alcohol began to evaporate rapidly right from the cups. The warrior very quickly realized that, it seemed, he had made the drink too hot too early, and because of this, all the wonderful sake evaporated. At this moment, everyone felt the colossal power of inner energy. This person was at least at the peak of strength. So the head of the house decided to sniff out who he was. They decided that this man was a monk, but no. He carried a wooden fish only because he picked it up on the way here. Since it was already late, he still decided to introduce himself before leaving. He was a demonic tribute collector and a member of the Unorthodox Alliance. A man once known as the demonic assistant. His name was Gu Goryu. Once he was known as one of the demonic twins, those who mercilessly feasted in the world of martial arts. After a clash with the evil alliance, fights with their leader, and eventual defeat, he began working for these people. His main task is to collect debts from organizations that do not pay on time, and if they dare to resist destruction of the sect. Of course, the leader was scared. What if this was the man to whom the escort leader had handed a golden token? However, this was not that man. She had never seen this person before either. The demonic collector himself explained too much time had passed since the last time he was in this province. He heard that the Black Dao sect and the Zhao clan estate were destroyed. And in such a situation, when Tiger's Pit is celebrating with a loud banquet, it obviously arouses some suspicion. Of course, the head of the family immediately made it clear that it was just a coincidence. They had nothing to do with the destruction of the sect. And the demonic collector did not insist that it was true. In that case, he could allow them to continue today's banquet, yet some rumors reached him. These rumors concerned the young lady Ko Aiko, and she turned out to be even more beautiful than he had heard. He heard the Zhao clan was so blinded by her beauty that it even led to their downfall. In principle, considering her beauty, it was not surprising a whole sect broke out because of her. She was terribly beautiful. He decided to ask the girl, what does she think happens to those who are born powerless, yet with such beauty? Such a person is forced to endure undeserved humiliation, and he proved it when he spat right in the lady's face. Of course, the head immediately drew his sword. The escort leader did the same, not understanding how this man dared to express such insolence. If he came to start a fight, then he was very mistaken if he thought they would just stand and watch. Gu Goryu easily made the leader understand that someone like him could never defeat one of the demonic twins under any circumstances. But the leader did not expect victory and still could not stand aside when his daughter was just humiliated. He ordered the scoundrel to get out of here so as not to involve innocent people in the fight. Yet the man was not going to leave. Instead, he proposed to settle everything here and now forever. Of course, realizing the consequences, Ko Aiko immediately asked her father to take back his sword. After which she calmly wiped off the spit and, pouring alcohol for the guest, thanked him for teaching her something important. Of course, the man was shocked. After he spat in her face, she still pours him a drink. She was too pathetic for the daughter of a warrior clan. But in fact, the girl endured this humiliation not to grovel before him. The warrior had reached the pinnacle of mastery, a true elder in the world of martial arts, and she, as a junior warrior, was simply showing him her respect. However, Gu Goryu considered it ironic that despite being a great warrior with incredible strength, all he did was humiliate a weak girl. Of course, Ko Aiko immediately understood the man was trying to twist her words, so she repeated again that she expressed sincere feelings. After that, bowing, she asked him to accept the cup filled with alcohol. In the end, the man laughed out loud, but still drank the alcohol poured for him. After that, he apologized for his earlier rude behavior and asked the sect leader to put away his sword. He even hinted that he was doing this to save the man's reputation, so it was better to heed his advice. Under the sad gaze of his daughter, the leader was forced to agree and sheathed the sword. Only then did the man calmly leave, realizing that the leader had raised a brilliant, exceptionally clever girl. If he were about 50 years younger, he might also want to make this girl his own. Before leaving, he remembered that he had forgotten something important. Since the Black Dao sect was destroyed, he could not collect the proper tribute, but returning empty-handed would mean disgracing his reputation. As is known, he does not care who destroyed Black Dao or the Zhao clan estate. He only needs to bring the required amount of money. A moment ago, Gu Goryu had already done him a favor and saved his reputation, so now he would have to help Goryu. Of course, the leader immediately understood this man was trying to collect tribute from various clans that belonged to orthodox sects. The impudent man himself preferred to call it not tribute, but compensation. So the leader was curious had the man already visited the Namjun clan. The impudent man himself preferred to call it not tribute, but compensation. So the leader was curious had the man already visited the Namjun clan. Yet he appeared because he heard Tiger's Pit earned a lot of money during its last order. So Gu Goryu suggested Ko Henan consider this payment as money given in sympathy to the poor souls of the fallen Black Dao sect. Of course, the old man asked Gu Goryu to give him some time to think. However, without much thought, he immediately launched a warning attack. He made it clear time was precious to everyone. If the patriarch wanted to live, he had to immediately bring out the required sum. Ko Genin himself was in extreme confusion, realizing if he angered the demonic assistant, Tiger Pit would be wiped off the face of the earth that very night. And even if he turned to the Namjun clan for help, there was no guarantee they would respond to his plea. In the end, all he could do was meet the conditions of this scoundrel. A huge pile of gold and silver instantly appeared on the table. Since the elder gave Gu Goryu all his wealth, he demanded that he not touch a single member of his sect. Gu Goryu, examining the ingots, reminded himself that he was not some monster and valued agreements. Still, he was struck. Today Ko Genin had such a deadly intention. From all these riches, he took one gold ingot and threw it toward Lady Ko Aiko. He asked the girl to accept this money as an apology for having humiliated her earlier. After that, waiting until the lady bowed, he decided to disappear. He also noticed there was no need to see him off today. The moon shone brightly, so he would easily find his way home. In the deep night after the banquet ended, the stablemen were talking that the bastard was so powerful that he could kill everyone who was at the banquet. It was pleasing that they managed to resolve this problem with money. After all, death was the worst possible outcome. At that moment, the stuffed steward also ran to the stablemen. He was looking for someone. When they saw a whole pile of meat with him, they rejoiced. The banquet was ruined, so they thought they would not be able to have dinner, but the master took care of them. But the dishes were not prepared at all for these two. He remembered the words of that warrior who said, "He must be grateful to our hero for the rest of his life." He remembered the words of that warrior who said, "He must be grateful to our hero for the rest of his life." And now he began to realize the power of Gu Goryu. He was not some kind of madman. Our hero had already gone out on another hunt with his spear. When the man, who suspected nothing, stepped onto the bridge, he immediately felt the aura of a killer. It came from afar. At first, he took him for some kind of monster, but he quickly realized it was just a person. Moreover, he recognized in him the stableman who had interested him at the banquet earlier. Gu Goryu was curious why was the young man chasing him. Was the reason that he had boldly insulted his beloved. He also made the main character understand, if he came to avenge his beloved woman, it was not the best idea. Of course, he humiliated her, looking her straight in the face, but she did not take the bait. In other words, his offense was in vain, so there was no reason for them to sue each other. But the young man was inflamed by the fact that this person imitated monks without any zeal. Moreover, he was annoyed that he endlessly spouted pure nonsense. Therefore, he rushed at him with a spear, demanding that he give him all his money. Goryu himself was only glad 40 years had passed since he last heard such words from anyone. The last person who said this to him was the King Knight Bandit. Now he was sure this guy would definitely be the last to dare say such nonsense to him. When he struck his cane directly on the spear, the shaft trembled, but even from the deferred force, it did not break. Because of this, the man became interested in this spear. He decided to find out its name. When he learned that it had no name, it touched him with a bit of pity. After all, the spear was truly wonderful, like a family heirloom. After that, he revealed his weapon. It was once also a spear, but when the blade broke, he used it as a club. Still, it was forged from black iron, so it was very strong, though a bit heavy. That was the only drawback. If the blade had remained intact, it would have been called the Spear Demon, not the Club Demon. And suddenly, while the man was speaking, the bridge began to sway violently. Our hero grabbed the ropes and started jumping on them, casually explaining to the impudent one, no matter how strong his weapon was, it was still a spear without a blade, like a lone wolf who lost its fangs. Just like Goryu now. Having said this, the young man launched an attack, and honestly the warrior, who was confused, panicked. With the first strike, the main hero slashed his face, leaving a huge bloody scar. This greatly upset the man because, as everyone knows, a surprise strike in a duel between warriors is a sign of cowardice. So he raised his club for a blow and aimed it straight at the young man's face. But Rui easily dodged, then scattered his metal spikes all around. Of course, the man was confident that such cowardly tactics would not work against him. At that moment, taking advantage of the enemy's distraction, our hero tried to spit his poisoned blood at him. But he easily dodged, then realized the young man was truly affected that he had insulted his beloved. And at that very moment, the main hero rose on his hands and caught that bloody spit with his foot, then struck the man in the face with all his might. He immediately realized the spits of this boy burn, therefore he decided that he was some kind of poison master from a dark family. Moreover, the inspection was now difficult due to fog and the effect of a strong poison. In the end, all he could do was just strike blindly until he came to his senses a little and let go. Goryu was convinced that he had underestimated Tiger Pit. He did not think that an ordinary groom among them could be so strong. In fact, the man perfectly understood. Such a boy could not have passed training in Tiger Pit. And most importantly, he was too different from all the others. Such a style of fighting cannot be considered orthodox. The movements disregard the rules of decency, and the whole body of this person itself is a deadly weapon. But Goryu did not care whose Shutzi was a demon and from which underworld he crawled out. Therefore, he ordered the boy to attack. After all, he himself was ready to send him back to hell with his own hands. At this time, our hero intercepted his spear and made it clear that the enemy talked too much, after which the two clashed their deadly auras. From the very first strike, Shutsuji managed to cut off his enemy's arm and the bloody flesh quickly flew off the bridge, crashing down. However, at the same time, though it cost him dearly, the opponent managed to pierce the young man's body using his club. Therefore, he was confident that he had won. People usually died as soon as he drove his weapon into them and left a huge hole in their chest. But the enemy still could not believe that he had paid such a huge price for this victory. It was strange how some brat could be such a threat to him. He especially noticed that Shutsuji looked too much like a representative of the demonic path. At that moment, the man felt that the internal injuries to his body were extremely serious. This young guy really turned out to be very strong, so the man could not leave him alive and decided to finish him off here and now. But at that very moment, he felt a terrible demonic energy. The young man's wounds began to slowly heal. Frightened, Goryu immediately barked out of fear, not understanding who the main hero really was and what kept him on his feet. Was it money, pride, fighting spirit, or love? What was the reason driving them? However, the reason why our hero was still fighting death was fear. He decided to ask the man if he knew where people go when they die. Shutzi knew perfectly well. The demons chasing him repeatedly dragged him into the abyss. Therefore, as a person who knows exactly where he will end up, he could not afford to die. Goryu, to be honest, was impressed, realizing Shutzi rose from the fear of death, and one thing amazed him: what exactly did he see there? Of course, one could die from curiosity, but Goryu was not going to give up his own life. And he did not want to die here. He would rather quietly pass away in his bed, a feeble old man. After all, the duel continued, and in the fight the young man managed to cut off 2 more fingers from the opponent. Moreover, when the opponent was already confident of victory, the main character threw his darts at him straight from his mouth. Of course, the man in panic had no idea what the young man had just used. And the young man simply bit the metal in his mouth, soaked it with his blood, and warned the man that today he would definitely die. After that, our hero continued fighting. Despite mortal wounds, he still quite vigorously attacked the opponent. Therefore, obviously, the man called the young man a real devil in the flesh. After that, he threw his club as if it had knocked off half of the hero's head. The man still did not stop and continued laughing with joy. He understood that he had indeed managed to achieve victory. So he ordered the young man to keep lying like an obedient boy until he got rid of him with the final blow. But despite the number of injuries, the main hero still had the strength to move, although the man was sure he definitely had knocked his head off. And at that very moment, the young man destroyed the bridge on which they were fighting. Then Goryu realized. Shuxi simultaneously took his blows and simultaneously repelled the attack with his spear. It became obvious the youth was already ready to die and wanted to take him down with himself. And the man could not allow the boy to win. He tried to escape from the collapsing bridge and did not even suspect that our hero had already sent his demons after him. When they were already reaching for his back, he immediately felt their presence. He realized the young man was still alive, but even if so, in such a state, he could not emit such energy. Therefore, he fearfully decided to turn around at the last moment to understand what was happening with the lad. At that moment, the main hero was literally flying into the abyss and used the spear tip tied to a rope clinging to the man. In the end, with this weapon, he smashed his head, leaving a hole there. Then Goryu was convinced not in vain. When he first saw the young man here, he took him for a monster. Even monster was a mild word for him. He was literally the god of death. Eventually, our hero, using the same rope, hung right above the abyss. He perfectly understood. His body was completely shattered, his head crushed, his insides torn apart, even his leg was broken. And he understood if he did not die, he would definitely be able to recover. And all thanks to the cursed demonic art bound by blood. He remembered the teacher's words. He said the only reason he could continue to take revenge, even when the body was disfigured, was the incredible healing power of the higher demonic arts. Thanks to them, our hero also remained alive. Only for this should he be grateful. But at that very moment, the rain intensified even more, and lightning struck directly at the corpse chained to the rock. At that moment, the body burst into flames, and the corpse along with the rock fragments flew straight toward the young man. And to be honest, he was a bit shocked. It seemed to him that this corpse even decided to joke with him the same way, pulling him along after death. Eventually, the main character fell straight down from the cliff and was buried by the earth. The demons of the people he had killed continued to curse him, wishing that he would die and rot alive in this grave. At that moment, the staff demon materialized right at his feet and rushed straight toward the young man. The boy himself began to pronounce its name, and on the third time, he said it just before the demon was ready to strike. In the end, he became part of the entities that were constantly hunting our hero. When this boy absorbed this demon, he was also able to seize the power that allowed him to heal a little. For this reason, he quickly realized that the enemy had become a cursed spirit who had reached the peak of his power. His humility would probably take quite some time, but he would become the very food that would raise him from the stage of compression to the stage of remains. Therefore, our hero decided to calmly return home, completely forgetting that his leg was broken. Obviously, immediately upon returning home, the first thing to do was to take care of his body. Opening the meridians could be postponed for now. Moreover, unfortunately, his broken spear no longer weighed anything. It did not even serve him as a cane. And at that very moment, he looked at the body of Goryu covered with stones. He raised the club that he had used. It really was quite heavy. If it had been a full-fledged spear, he probably would have died after the very first attack. And to avoid repeating the fate of that toothless dog he killed, he needed to cultivate a sharp tip for his own spear. With money limping on a broken leg, he made his way home. But unfortunately, even after absorbing the power of the higher demon, he still could not fully recover. For the first time since he returned to the past, he had to give his all in the fight. It was incredibly hard. Every drop of rain seemed to pierce his body like a needle, and the staff with the bag turned out to be incredibly heavy. He wanted to close his eyes for a short while and just rest. But he remembered the words of the young lady who said, as long as he was in Tiger's Pit, they were one family. Then he understood family is a place where he can rest properly. Right now, he desperately needed exactly such a place. At that moment, the lady under the candles was thinking deeply about something in her room. She perfectly understood that the world of Murime lives by strict laws. According to these laws, a person with a kind heart cannot be weak. This is a world where only the strong can dictate their views and beliefs until death itself. The girl's father once went through all this, and now she must also walk this path. She received a message about admission to the Muram Alliance. She was to enter the academy, which is under the direct control of the Alliance. They accept boys and girls aged from 16 to 18 for special training. This is how they become leaders capable of leading the entire world. In fact, she secretly submitted documents to take the exam and passed it successfully. She wanted to graduate from the academy and, relying on her experience, elevate her family's name to a higher level. But there is one nuance: a damn high tuition fee. If she had the money stolen from Gu Goryu, she could afford the payment. But the lady tried not to be sad, because while people from the Tiger Pit sect were being rescued, money did not matter, so she did not regret her choice at all. Therefore, the girl calmly opened the window to freshen up and regain consciousness. As soon as she rode out to take a little ride on her horse, a downpour broke out. Of course, she immediately began to protest. Even the weather, she said, was against her. It seems the only one who liked standing in the rain was her horse, and this made the mistress feel even worse. But suddenly she heard some noise, so she immediately mounted her horse and checked who was to blame here. But as soon as she turned the corner, she saw only a multitude of bloody traces. When he came closer, she saw a young man with a cane, but at first she thought it was a ghost. And as soon as the aura slightly dissipated, she quickly realized it was a human. Of course, he immediately tried to escape, but the girl quickly stopped him. She threw him ointment for wounds. Although she understood that it was not the most expensive remedy, it could help this young man. Of course, she did not know who he was or what had happened to him, but even so, she had recklessly interfered in his affairs. Because the lady could not bear to watch someone suffer right before her eyes, she asked, "Let him take this ointment, and if he does not need it, just throw it away and leave." But the young man smiled and still accepted this gift. After that, remaining in the shadows, he threw out the bloody bag of money. He asked the girl to take him, and after that, without explaining anything, immediately left. The lady still could not calm herself. She was tormented by guesses about what might be inside the mysterious bag. The woman horrifiedly assessed the terrifying size of the bundle and caught the dreadful smell of fresh blood. She trembled at the thought that inside lay someone's severed head. But still, when the mistress dared to unfold the blood-stained cloth, something completely different appeared before her stunned eyes: treasures of the Tiger Pit sect. These were the very riches that Hu Goryu once stole. The girl immediately realized the true state of affairs a moment later. Without wasting a second, the young person rushed after the young man who was bleeding, eager to find out how such immense wealth ended up in his hands. Alas, when the distressed lady turned the corner, before her eyes appeared only a large bloody smear spreading across the stone floor. It seemed to have vanished from the wounded man, had dissolved into the night darkness. Now the lady had nothing left to do but guess the true identity of the mysterious young man. And only at that moment did the noble maiden realize why the stranger's gate was so lonely, thoroughly permeated with unspeakable suffering. That same night, the main character hurriedly slipped into the manor's stables. As soon as he crossed the threshold, the warrior felt someone's breath in the darkness. Grasping a heavy hammer, the exhausted young man prepared for battle. He certainly did not expect uninvited guests so late. However, a familiar silhouette of the manager emerged from the shadows. Shuji had no time for empty games with this person. Nevertheless, the steward immediately fell prostrate before his savior, offering thanks for the life granted. The loyal servant explained that he had brought a considerable portion of meat and rice cakes so that the warrior could properly satiate himself and regain strength. After which the leader, frightened, began to examine the hero's battered body. His faithful assistant decided that enemies had attacked the youth and fervently swore to avenge the insult. But instead of revenge, Shuji asked for something else to gather the rarest ingredients for him. The warrior needed aconite root, dragon's blood, persimmon petals, fenugreek seeds, iced sesame, long pepper, and longan root. The steward busily began to write all the components on a sheet of parchment. The confused man had no idea where to get such amazing components. Then the main hero led him to Master Gu, a woman from the escort bureau, since everything necessary could be obtained from her. Of course, the manager was quite scared, understandably. He did not understand how he could come to her and ask for help. But the warrior reassured his loyal servant, "Just remember the name Shuji and everything will be immediately understood." The steward immediately decided that the wounded youth was mocking him and almost gave the hero a scolding for such impudence. But in the end, the right assistant calmed down because Shuji was his salvation. the manager agreed to set out in search of the needed components. The warrior additionally explained the most important detail. When the servant appears to her, he must say that he has come on behalf of Shu. The steward only nodded in response, although he himself felt uncertain. As soon as the servant disappeared into the darkness of the night, the main hero immediately began cultivating his inner energy. So far, the level of his spear demon has reached the 10th step of the bone armor. After that, grand demonic gates materialized before the exhausted warrior. To open them wide, the young man had to break through the immune meridian and, absorbing precious blood, refill it again with the help of a spiritual elixir. This path held deadly danger, but all cultivation points fully opened during the furious battle with the staff demon. Perhaps the warrior drank too much blood, and an ordinary elixir would no longer be enough to break through. Then the main hero could completely replace the lack of fluid with the soul of the demon itself. The young man began to attract the phantom entity to himself. The soul resisted fiercely, continuously trying to break free from invisible chains, but the warrior managed to absorb it completely. And soon the exhausted fighter fully immersed himself in deep meditation. At that very moment, a breathless manager rushed to the stable, dragging behind him a heavy bag with all the necessities. When the devoted servant appeared before the mistress with the escort, she had just heard the hero's name, immediately deciding to help. And upon learning that support was needed only in herbs, she simply handed over all the rarest ingredients without unnecessary questions. Now the stunned steward had accumulated an incredible number of questions about Shuji's true identity. The main character, having taken the precious bag, strictly ordered the steward to ensure that no one dared to enter until he himself came out. And if something unforeseen happened, the servant was to inform the head of the bureau. After which the massive doors slammed shut and the warrior fully immersed himself in a meditative trance. When a cultivator overcomes the cranial meridian up to reaching the dual principles, no one can determine whether it is battle magic or not. Of course, except for the founder of the demon spear path himself. Shuji was seized by curiosity. What is his mentor doing now? Could the Muram Alliance be pursuing the teacher, or perhaps some powerful sect? Or maybe the master still serves as a god general in the heavenly demon cult? Or perhaps the legendary warrior was looking for disciples like Shuji and Ko Aiko once were. Immersed in hallucinations from the past, the young man confidently moved toward the phantom gates, ignoring everything around him. When the main character was about to dissolve them, the warrior noticed a barely visible silhouette of Ko Aiko behind him. The ghost instantly realized that the hero had decided to leave, and so wished the young man good luck on his journey. Shuji took the potato from his phantom hands and smiled one last time at his brother. The warrior snapped out of the trance and realized he was lying on a haystack. The exhausted fighter felt much better and also guessed the steward would still be watching outside. But as soon as the young man left the stable, he saw the servant was fidgeting and dozing under the door, leaning his forehead against his own shoulder. Ignoring the sleeping assistant, the main hero disappeared into the distance. Finally, the warrior reached the highest step, the Gate of Yuna. At that very moment, the fighter completed his revenge on the Black Dao. After the head of the Zhou clan, the third target becomes the cowards from Anshan province, and then the pinnacle of the 5 great families, the Namjun clan. Looking over the night city from a height, the young man had already planned where he would go next time. At that very moment, the head of the family was telling his wife that the mighty Namjun clan had sent them an invitation. This year, the influential family held their grand annual banquet. The wife was surprised. Why did the noble clan invite orthodox sects to this meeting, especially them, such an insignificant family? Ko Jenin reminded the noble lady that a representative of the Zhou clan from Hen province had disappeared mysteriously, so their family would become a worthy replacement for those who had fallen. The woman understood, even if they were innocent at the feast of the powerful of this world, they would definitely not be met with open arms. The head of the family knew this perfectly. In Muram, only the voice of absolute power is heard. If a person is weak, they will have no chance of respect, so they will suffer even when it is blatantly unfair. Moreover, before the face of the Namjun clan, they are just a worthless sect, a small fish. The woman asked her husband not to worry in vain and shared fresh news. The daughter of the Namjun clan, who applied to the prestigious academy, was accepted. It was about the legendary blooming sword. Moreover, among the noble ladies, rumors circulated. The true purpose of the lavish banquet was to present their gifted daughter to high society, to showcase her to the public and rightfully boast of such a talented descendant. The head of the family was only in favor of such an arrangement. He could spare himself a whole day of exhausting listening to the arrogant boasts of that pompous man. But the old man also understood. Their own daughter was by no means inferior to that girl from Namjun. The girl was not lacking in divine appearance, incredible talent, or noble character. The only thing the young lady lacked was truly influential and competent parents. So the father was ready to promote his precious child forward until it was too late. After all, as a father, he felt inadequate, unable to give his daughter everything she needed. At that very moment, without prior knocking, their daughter suddenly burst in. Apologizing for the sudden intrusion, the young lady decided to show her parents a package sent from the famous Muram Academy. Of course, both parents were overjoyed as soon as they realized. The results of their precious daughter were so high that the girl entered the legendary educational institution without any problems. Immediately, the father exclaimed that he would definitely arrange a grand banquet in honor of such a joyful event, but the noble lady decided to negotiate about the tuition expenses. Of course, the head of the family immediately declared he would get the necessary funds, even if he had to sell all the pillars in their modest sect. All that was required of the daughter was to focus solely on her studies. But at that moment, the girl proudly threw a whole bag of silver ingots at her parents' feet. The young lady asked her father and mother not to worry about anything else. The money for her education she had already brought with her. The next day, the noble lady calmly set off to the picturesque lake to rest a little and enjoy nature. Moreover, the girl noticed one oddity. As soon as the mysterious Shuji appeared in their estate, everything began to improve as if by magic. The lady approached the pensive young man to ask where he had been disappearing lately. After all, the warrior had been vanishing for whole days. Moreover, the noble person noticed some changes in the servant's appearance compared to before. However, when the boy did not answer her, the girl got angry and immediately rewarded the silent one with a sharp slap on the back of the head. The enraged mistress demanded to know why the insolent servant did not respond when she called him. Of course, the young man understood he simply did not want to answer her inquiries. In fact, the warrior was thinking about how to cause a real uproar in the Namjun clan. The main character recalled the story of Ko Aiko from a past life. Then the elder of the Namyun clan secretly conspired with the Dark Path sect and concealed the brutal attack on the Tiger Pit sect. At that time, Ko Aiko was burning with rage at the Namjun clan for that monstrous crime they committed, hiding behind their power. Namjun is indeed a powerful clan, famed for its colossal influence throughout the province. Therefore, the noble family had the sacred right to intervene in affairs between sects and clans. But even within the Namjun clan, there were their own rotten factions. These insidious ones decided not to see what was happening in the minor sects and instead took generous bribes. Their names had long been on the hit list compiled by Ko Aiko. One of these traitors was even the very one who treacherously stabbed the hero in the back in his past life. At this moment, the girl, immersed in her own thoughts, suggested that Shuji go with her to the academy because she had been accepted into this legendary institution. In a past life, Ko Aiko said that he had also been accepted into the academy, but the brother could not go there. There was not enough money, and he sincerely believed, if he had enrolled then, his fate would have turned out completely differently. Now the young lady was happy. She would be able to study within the famous walls, broaden her horizons, find useful connections, and return to revive the greatness of her family. Shuji was incredibly talented, so he could give her a ride to the academy, and then the boy's life would probably change for the better. A smile appeared on Shuji's face at the thought. The dream that his brother could not fulfill in the past would come true in this life. Probably when the studies are over, the rest the girl will be able to arrange herself. The noble maiden hoped that the main hero would go on the journey with her. However, the warrior could not guarantee anything in advance, so he referred to unforeseen circumstances. Nevertheless, the lady decided anyway. The boy agreed to go with her. The girl only asked that the young man finish all unfinished business before leaving. The academy was located quite far from their land. The young mistress hoped that the servant owed no one and was not bound by obligations to anyone. But the main hero calmly admitted everything was exactly the opposite. He was the one owed money, and the girl was horrified. The noble person perfectly understood. If someone owed the warrior, he must demand the debt back and collect every last copper coin. The mistress immediately angrily decided to help the young man with this, despite any obstacles. The main hero calmly realized the immutable truth. Whatever happens, debts must be paid in full to the last coin and to the last drop of blood. Until the very end, and the warrior's thoughts turned to the Namjun clan. After several days, the entire family had already arrived at the majestic walls of the Namjun clan's domain. Considering the escort, she helped the gentleman out of the carriage after such a long and exhausting journey. The head of the family thanked the girl for making the trip so comfortable thanks to her. The arrivals could not believe their own eyes. The Namjun clan was truly grand and magnificent. All the people here looked incredibly stately and beautiful. So the rumors that the Namjun clan recruits 300 servants solely based on beauty criteria turned out to be absolutely true. Honestly, compared to these people, the guests could not stand next to them at all. However, the steward tried to calm himself with the thought that they still worked much harder than these idlers. And at that very moment, Shuji was surrounded from all sides by beautiful maidservants, admiring his divine beauty and the strength of his muscular arms. The girls eagerly wanted to please the handsome young man in every possible way. Of course, the lady immediately flared up with rage at this scoundrel. Could he have forgotten why they came here to their savior? At that moment, the guests noticed. The main character only glanced at them casually and seemed to dissolve into thin air, vanishing beyond the gates. The warrior instantly disappeared near the manager and asked him to take care of all these troublesome disputes, after which he swiftly took off and vanished completely. The maidservants immediately pestered the steward with endless questions. Did he know the mysterious Shuji? Where had such a handsome young man gone? But the steward tried in every way to portray himself as a macho to attract the attention of the beautiful ladies to his person. Alas, the girls felt furious disgust and reproached the self-satisfied man, saying he literally spoiled the appearance and mood just by his presence. At this time, the main character was watching the fight between the clan servants. The strict mentor urged them to move properly because the time for the most important ceremony was about to come. At that very moment, one of the young men suddenly fell and, rolling on the ground, stopped. When the instructor saw what an expensive thing the boy had almost damaged with his fall, the man became insanely angry. The fierce mentor began to beat the unfortunate youth cruelly, reminding him, even if he lets this loser be meat, that expensive thing will turn out to be more valuable than his worthless life. When the instructor beat the boy and grew tired of the execution, the latter demanded that the unfortunate stop causing problems. And besides, the man was incredibly busy educating others, worthless students. After that, the strict mentor ordered the servants to throw this scum out. They were already supposed to finish all preparations for the sacred ceremony and could no longer waste time on such filth. Of course, the servants immediately began to carry out the order, but the assistants warned the instructor about a small problem. The wolf they caught for the offering turned out to be too gigantic, making it extremely difficult to move the beast. Of course, the mentor immediately got angry at these idiots and ordered them to call other, stronger servants who could carry the sacrificial bull. And at that very moment, the man caught a strange, ominous smell. It came from the covered cart. After that, the instructor saw burning red eyes in the darkness. Obviously, the stern warrior immediately calculated. These scoundrels brought a sacrifice without even checking if she was alive or dead. So the angry man decided to cut off the legs of all those responsible for such outrageous negligence. But when the mentor looked inside the cage, he saw nothing except a small wolf cub. It was lying calmly on the ground. Of course, the instructor decided that the servants had brazenly lied. The wolf was not at all so gigantic that two strong men couldn't lift it. Only then did he finally notice a truly colossal wolf, a real monster. With such a sacrifice, the ceremony will be truly impressive, so the man was only glad about the unexpected luck. At first, the stern mentor thought these guys were useless fools, but they really brilliantly handled the incredibly difficult task. The clan leader would definitely appreciate their precious gift. However, at that very moment, a noose tightened around the instructor's neck. After that, an invisible force began slowly strangling the doomed man. The thing was that the main character had touched the clan's estate. The warrior was curious about how it was arranged inside and what secrets it held. Of course, the suffocating mentor decided. The hero was trying to take him hostage alive to interrogate him under torture. But this young man did not need that worthless man to tell anything at all. In the end, the fighter broke his neck with a crunch, and the soul immediately tore out of the lifeless body. The reason for the murder was simple. The dead were much more honest and reliable than the living. At that moment, the clan's servants surrounded the grooms from the retinue and begged for help. Even though the arrivals were not full members of the Nam Jun clan, the assistants promised to feed them generously for just one small favor. All that was required of the guests was to carry the wolf into the main hall for the ceremony. The comrades also urged their younger friend to approach the carriage faster before unforeseen problems arose again. Immediately after that, they hung the massive beast on metal chains to take it with them to the ceremony. The manager demanded that these clan servants keep their word and definitely feed them as promised. Moreover, the arrivals were surprised that the wolf was incredibly heavy. The stablemen even calculated maybe the predator was somehow already pregnant. Soon a luxurious banquet began. Everyone was partying and laughing while the clan head watched the celebration from his elevated throne. But very soon the King of Swords, the former clan head, lost patience with this empty entertainment. Of course, the current head, who was also the son of the legend, tried to explain to his father that the situation was extremely tense due to the sudden fall of the Zhou clan. Moreover, it could not be denied, the Zhou clan was a branch of the Namjun clan, a distant relative of a respected member of the Council of Elders. Of course, the patriarch knew this well. He had seen the former head several times in childhood. He was a cheerful child. And now, when it became known that he collaborated with the Black Path sects, the Zhou clan had to somehow rectify the situation. As a center of the orthodox faction, they could not afford such a disgrace on their reputation. Of course, the elder saw no problem in the fact that weaklings died in their own disputes. That's why I thought his son was pondering a bunch of useless things. He even compared. Earlier, he released anger much more easily when playing with other children in childhood. And it seems the patriarch was not at all concerned by the head's arguments that one cannot compare the Zhou clan, the Black Path sect, and an ordinary children's game. At that very moment, a young lady appeared, daughter of the elder of the Namjun clan. The girl hurriedly announced that it was time to head to the banquet hall. The patriarch of the Namjun clan immediately enthusiastically greeted his daughter, marveling at how quickly she had aged. The elder hoped that the young pupil of the academy would manage to find herself a worthy husband. And the head of the family immediately flared up with anger at his father, believing that his daughter was still not mature enough to contemplate marriage. The same heiress believed that her grandfather was right. She needed to find a husband as soon as possible and become a valuable support for the family. The father was terrified, fearing that the child might have suddenly developed feelings for someone, but this was far from the truth. The young lady clearly understood. After graduating from the academy, everything could change fundamentally, and she was determined to be ready for any twists of fate. For this reason, the grandfather suggested to his granddaughter to immediately start looking for a worthy groom, but to scrutinize the candidates with utmost care. The main thing is not to choose a man as boring and faceless as the current head of the clan. Eventually, the head of the family hastily silenced the old man, then reminded his daughter that the blood oath ceremony was about to begin. The blood oath was an ancient ritual. The blood of the defeated beast was poured into a copper basin, from which those who sought to seal the alliance drank in turn. The daughter had to use the sacred blade of the family to collect the sacrificial blood in a ritual vessel. It was an extremely important mission. The young heiress vowed to do her utmost so that the glory of the Namjun clan would shine forever, ages upon ages. For this reason, the leader decided to go to the banquet with his family and invited the patriarch to follow them. And at that very moment, the old man spotted a crowd of guests chatting below and decided to go down first. As a farewell, addressing his daughter, he asked her to vigilantly guard her sword so that no one would dare to take it from her. Although this request caused the girl a bunch of incomprehensible questions, the heiress swore to keep the blade at any cost. Soon all the guests were actively talking about the fact that this time representatives of the Tiger's Pit sect were invited to the celebration. Many have heard the Zhou clan pushed all supporters of the Tiger Pit to the outskirts, but considering that today they were here, these rumors seemed nothing more than malicious slander. Many guests whispered that the followers of Tiger Pit had neither money nor influence. How could they destroy the mighty Zhou clan and the adepts of the Black Path? Of course, however, considering these scathing mockeries, the head of the Tiger Pit sect could hardly control himself with his fury. At that moment, the elder of the Palace of Fire from the Namjun clan descended to the gathered. He noticed that many guests had very gloomy faces. The old man decided, probably they did not like the terms of the contract that he had worked on so diligently. The attendees immediately surrounded the man, assuring that the terms of the agreement were absolutely fair. No wonder it was the work of the elder himself. Now everyone felt completely safe under the protection of the Namjoon clan. In fact, it was just hypocrisy. The guests perfectly understood this agreement was outright extortion. But still, they continued to praise the Namjoon clan. Being chosen to study the secret arts of the clan seemed like a dream come true. Therefore, the elder noticed unfamiliar faces among the guests. He instantly realized, most likely it was the leader of the Tiger Pit sect about whom persistent rumors circulate. The man immediately bowed respectfully before the elder. For him, it was a great honor to meet such a legend. The elder himself reminded Ko Jenin that from now on they would see each other much more often, especially after the tragedy that befell the Zhou clan. Ko Hanan immediately swore that he had no relation to this malicious incident. And the elder, with a menacing smile, pretended to believe these words. After all, he invited the sect leader precisely because he fully trusts him. Moreover, the elder hinted that the blood oath declared today would become an incredible opportunity for the Tiger Pit sect. When they get rich by acquiring the secret art of the Namjoon clan, they will be able to easily pay for protection and still have a solid profit. Since the arranged marriage with the clan never happened, this was the perfect option. They could even give Ko Jenin's daughter as a concubine. Lately, many girls preferred becoming concubines of influential men rather than wives of powerless commoners. Clearly, as soon as the young lady heard this, she was horrified but did not dare to object. And as soon as the head of the Namjoon clan appeared, he flew into a rage at the words he heard. The elder immediately rushed to justify himself, assuring that he had only met guests and talked with them a little. But the chief seemed not to believe these words, so she again demanded the elder explain what he was doing here at all. To somehow relieve the suffocating tension, the elder also burst into laughter and explained. The leader was too frightened because of the upcoming event. He explained that the new guests had questions about the contract, and he was simply explaining everything to them. Ko Jenin had to play along with this lie. The elder hoped that now the head of the Namjoon clan would believe him and not worry about anything. Why did he decide to leave and give up his place so that the leader himself would take it for the conversation? And upon leaving, the old man did not forget to remind Ko Jenin one last time. They would continue their conversation another time. There were still many days of joint work ahead. Of course, after the elder left, the leader immediately hurried to apologize for the elder's indecent words. Ko Jenin himself hurried to explain that the head of the Namjoon clan did not need to apologize to someone like him. But the clan leader did not see a problem in this. He expected that over time they would become strong allies. Moreover, he needed to apologize for the elder's words. The leader himself was a man of firm principles and personally came to apologize. He also addressed the young lady with apologies. These indecent words were directed at her. The girl, of course, accepted the apology and made it clear that she was fine, so the leader should not worry about it. At that moment, the head of Namjoon was impressed by the girl he saw. He had heard that she took first place in the entrance exams to the academy, and indeed, she deserved praise. Perhaps she would become a friend or rival to his daughter. Finally, when everyone heard the solemn thunder of drums, those present realized the time for the ceremony had come. At that very moment, the younger Lady Namjoon appeared, so the head of the family hurriedly introduced her to the guests from the Tiger's Pit sect. Both girls immediately bowed respectfully and greeted each other with reverence. And of course, the young heiress Namjoon cautiously received the girl who took first place in the entrance exams, but showed no outward sign. Instead, she reported that the preparation for the ritual was already completed. Finally, it was time to begin the blood oath ritual. In the end, the leader ascended to the top of the tower and solemnly expressed gratitude to all the valiant gatherers who had assembled here today. Everyone immediately froze before such a majestic display of the leader's power. The man himself declared that they all had drawn their swords in the name of the principles of justice and balance. But to accelerate in the world, apostles commit atrocities, barbarians rage in the east, and demons sow chaos in the west. The power of the Murim alliance, which was supposed to restrain them, weakens with each passing day. So today, thanks to this oath, they will become one. They will protect the justice and balance that have been preserved from generation to generation. After this speech, everyone immediately stood up and began to glorify the name of the Namjoon clan. When the younger lady realized that it was her turn to follow her father, she stepped forward step by step and prepared to draw her blade to begin the ritual. Her sword, belonging to the Namjoon clan, was to glorify their name today along with her. Finally, the girl began a dance with the sword, and it enchanted everyone watching with its incredible, otherworldly grace. After the dance came the final part of the ceremony. She had to put her entire essence into the tip of this blade. It was the technique of the incomparable sword of the boundless heavens, heavenly dance of the single line. But just as the girl was about to pierce the wolf's carcass, a human hand suddenly burst out from the beast's entrails. At that moment, the unknown person reached straight for the blade in her hands. Then the heiress remembered her father's order. Today no one must be allowed to take her sword. But the girl was so unprepared for the ambush that she did not even notice when she was grabbed. She did not understand what had happened at all. How did a person break out from inside the wolf's belly? But the carcass was truly real, yet the young lady was most worried about the sacred sword. At that moment, the stranger pressed the blade to her neck and warned, if she resisted, he would first press her pain points and then cut off her ear. At that moment, everyone noticed something resembling a person climbing out of the wolf, but many tried to shake off their fear and convinced themselves it was only entrails. And the father definitely felt his daughter's energy dissipated. Something happened somewhere above. And then the scabbard of the sacred sword flew off the step from her hands. At that moment, the stranger spoke, addressing the degenerates from the Namjoon clan. Those present, seeing that the man was holding the younger mistress by the neck, immediately demanded he must release the heiress at once. But the hero had two demands, and he wanted to voice the first just as the head of the family interrupted him. The clan leader believed that the boy must first release his daughter before announcing demands. But the patriarch timely silenced his son, believing that even having inherited the post of family head, he still could not get rid of his frivolity. If the stranger wanted to kill the girl, he would have done it immediately, but he desired something else, so he still held her hostage. Of course, Shuji also noticed that the elder was by no means foolish, and he even thanked the young man for the compliment. In the end, the hero warned, if anyone else tries to stand in his way, the first thing he will do is cut off this girl's head. Afterwards, he reminded that he had two demands. First, today's blood oath is annulled because it was unjust. How could the Namjoon clan, known as the great pillar of the righteous faction, make such a low and unfair deal? This is why the great cause cannot stand. Others, those who made this contract, must be executed. If they bring this person to the altar, he will release the girl without a scratch. The boss agreed to review the contract, but could not accept the demand for murder because it was unacceptable. But the hero thought, before talking about inadmissibility, one must first listen to the opinion of the crowd. At that moment, the elder himself fiercely cursed the bastard, believing that the Namjoon clan would never succumb to his bloody sweet speeches. But the young man explained to the elder, if he comes up here voluntarily, he will release the girl alive and unharmed. The old man was not going to agree to such a hostage exchange. He could not allow the hero to seal his martial arts. But the hero only looked at his words in surprise, had no idea about sealing anything. He could have beaten that man to death, so he gave the order, let him stop talking nonsense and come up here immediately. Of course, the elder immediately began to climb the stairs and save the girl after such impudence. The crowd whispered they could not believe that he would really climb up there, but they understood when the life of the niece was at stake, this was the best option. The chief did not know what to do because he could not resort to such dirty tricks. But if this continued, his daughter might suffer. In the end, as if nothing had happened, he allowed the elder to climb up and take his daughter. The old man did not expect the chief to give up so easily. It seemed he had no plan, so he brought trouble upon himself. Another crowd was delighted with the elder. He did not hesitate and rushed after the niece. They even felt sorry for whoever would face him in battle. It was obvious that no one understood the true fear of this man's power. The former chief urged the old man, demanding that he quickly get ready and climb up. He had no choice left, so under the pressure of the crowd, he immediately dashed upwards. And the family rejoiced. They had not seen such merriment for a long time. The old man did not know what to do or how to deal with the scoundrel who dared to mock him like that. When he stood up, he immediately realized, although the boy hid his face, he was very young. If he was not a master who had regained his youth, the old man would easily finish him with his bare hands. The hero was glad that they finally met again with the one who was first on his list of the condemned. Due to the connection with the Zhou family, the elder hushed up the matter of the massacre in the tiger's pit to avoid trouble. He also recruited Ko Aiko, destroyed the remnants of the sect, and then declared Shuji an enemy of all Murim. Shuji, as if nothing had happened, told the elder what he had already heard from Myasnikov. He was hunting his she-wolf. He did not understand why they brought the cub after killing its mother. Of course, the elder had no idea why the boy was dragging in all sorts of nonsense. Still, he explained, they killed the cub so it would not grow up and start to take revenge. From this answer, the hero understood. The old man's cruelty had not changed in this life or the previous one. He did not want to breathe the same air as such a person. He raised the sacred sword above the wolf's head, apologizing for what he was about to do. But he promised that in return, he would definitely send this one-eyed old man to hell. After that, he released the girl, who did not understand how someone like the hero dared to do such a thing right in the very heart of Namjoon's domain. She threatened that he would not escape. But the hero explained that he would have no problems with that. Then he forcibly kissed her and pushed the girl away. Along with this, he let a bit of his blood venom into her body, and immediately her head sharply tilted back. The head of the family panicked, deciding that Shuji had broken their previous agreements. But he hurried to explain everything. He did not break his words. He did not maim the girl, he just gave her poison. And after that, he immediately threw her off the tower. At the last moment, the elder still managed to catch his daughter and carefully lower her. Then he felt her inner energy was dissipating. It was poison that struck precisely at the inner energy. The old man knew nothing about such poison, so he did not know who Shuji was, and all he could do was helplessly call the doctor. And to the rest of the fighters, he ordered to immediately seize this vile scoundrel. But at that very moment, the hero showed everyone a bottle of antidote and warned, if anyone enters the altar, he will smash this vial. This also applied to the old man if he tried to escape. And of course, everyone understood, this was too cruel an exchange. The hero, as if nothing had happened, took a spear from his belt, simply from the corpse of the she-wolf. He immediately recognized this item and decided how the hero was connected to the demon through collecting money from the unorthodox alliance. But Shuji was not going to report. Instead, he immediately launched an attack even without warning. After just one attack, the old man understood everything. The power the young man possessed was colossal. The entire floor was shattered with a single strike. Now he finally realized this was the young man who had slaughtered the Zhou clan and all the adepts of the Dark Path. He was about to chop down the young man, but in the end, he himself ran into his spear. As soon as this happened, the hero dashed behind and wielded his hammer. Of course, the elder decided that he was nothing more than a vile rat, capable only of targeting guests. Because of his malicious smile, he did not notice the iron spikes scattered on the ground. When he cried out in pain, Shuji, as if nothing had happened, reminded the man that he should have an antidote in his hands. However, the old man was more concerned not about the antidote, but that the hero resorted to such a pitiful trick instead of an honest fight. But the hero was absolutely indifferent to his honesty. That was the whole reason. The air trembled with the anticipation of a bloody finale. A gigantic pillar of flame tore the sky above the tower, shocking all the witnesses. The warriors of the Namjoon clan rushed swiftly to help. The smoke slowly dispersed, revealing the place of the clash. A powerful wave threw the elder and his disciples to the ground. The old man recognized the forbidden technique, three-level abyss, in the enemy's movements. A predatory, eager smile appeared on the master's face. The bloodied enemy took a step forward, radiating a dark aura. The elder's blade fiercely flared with a blue glow. The enraged old man rushed into the attack with curses on his lips. The warrior in the wolf mask received the blow with icy calm. The bloodied hand promised the enemy a swift death. The swordsman in the mask struck from above with a devastating energy stream. The elder barely held back the onslaught behind an energy shield. The fight turned into a chaotic whirl of sparks and steel. The enemy's strike shook the very foundation of the arena. Energy waves tore apart the space around. The wolf warrior gracefully landed amidst the ruins. The old man disdainfully mocked the opponent's maneuvers. Tense silence hung before the final surge. Despite severe wounds, the warrior in the mask clenched his fists tighter. He rushed forward and drops of blood hung in the air. Red thorns instantly pierced the master's protective barrier. The elder's wild laughter drowned out the whistle of deadly blades. A sudden explosion threw the old man back and made him choke on a scream. The master grabbed his throat. Poison was spreading through his veins. The clan warriors froze at their leader's death rattle. The healer desperately tried to save those who still survived. The smoke settled, revealing a view of the destroyed stairs and total fiasco. The warrior froze amid the smoke, acknowledging the power of the old master. The elder bled blood over the ruins of greatness from the fallen idol. The technique of demonic blood began to burn his insides alive. The Avenger pulled out the vial and was already ready to put the final point in the battle. The glass clattered and fell right into the hands of the humiliated enemy. A cold ultimatum, the life of the niece or his own skin. The thirst for survival won. The old man tore towards the medicine like a beast. He instantly drained the vial, not hesitating for a second. The wolf warrior silently watched this act of selfishness. The crowd froze, realizing the baseness of their leader. Rage boiled in the eyes of those who saw the true face of the master. In the heavy silence echoed the name of the girl, abandoned to die. The victor breathed heavily, regaining strength after the bloody slaughter. The elder felt relief and was already planning the future escape. The executioner's voice called him a fool. A deadly poison was hidden in the vial. The old man's eyes filled with whiteness, plunging him into absolute darkness. The invisible avenger promised him eternal agony for all the crimes he had committed. The broken master plunged into the icy abyss of his own despair. In the darkness of the subconscious, a red flame of reckoning flared up. The blinded old man trembled as he called his tormentor. From the aura emerged a demonic face that craved bloody revenge. The ghost began reading the sentence, dryly listing each of the old man's murders. Horror gripped the sinner. Before him stood the dead Zhu Yangzhe. The dead man ironically said he came to take his accomplice to hell. A deathly silence fell, filled with the awareness of the inevitable end. The old man fiercely rejected the dead man's help and called him an ordinary dog. The heavy silence pressed down on his confession about using other clans. The ghost reminded who really did all the dirty work. The spirit accused the master of his death, prophesying the same fate for him. The enraged elder ordered the Mirage nobility to keep their place and obey. A devastating blow of blue aura was supposed to tear the vision to pieces. Instead of disappearing, the red spirit only gave a sinister laugh in response. The dead man dissolved into the darkness, promising a quick meeting in hell. The eerie laughter continues to echo from every shadow. An attempt to ignore the curse was interrupted by a sudden attack of pain. The old man fell to his knees, spitting out a puddle of black poison. His sight suddenly returned, giving the doomed a false hope. He heard his name and instantly forgot about the terrible hallucinations. The master responded joyfully, waiting for help to come from his own. The miserable old man crawled to the warriors, begging them to protect him from the enemy. But instead of rescue, he encountered only the icy rage of his comrades. The clan leader contemptuously accused him of stealing medicine for Yul. The elder babbled excuses, but no one was listening anymore. The disciples refused to be dogs and demanded the truth about Zhu Yangzhe's murder. The avenger explained, the poison forced the old man to loudly confess all his sins. The realization of his own self-exposure struck harder than any blade. A powerful strike with the shaft to the jaw put a bloody full stop to this conversation. With a strike of the shaft, the warrior knocked out the elder's teeth, reminding, the tongue is the root of all evil. The bloodied old man flew back under the weight of accusations of slander before all of Murim. The avenger recalled the exile of the sworn brother and the vile attempt on their lives. The elder panicked, denying guilt, clutching his broken mouth with a trembling hand. The warrior mercilessly loomed over the victim. Oblivion did not absolve guilt from retribution. The old man in despair spat out blood and swore he knew none of them. A bloody aura embraced the weapon in this life. Knowledge would no longer be needed. A devastating blow shattered the stone floor of the arena in a dazzling flash of light. The elder's death scream tore the night sky over the ruined tower. The mutilated master pitifully begged for mercy under the watchful eyes of the disciples. The warrior ordered the clan to freeze and, threatening to immediately finish off the captive, held his breath. Grabbing the wheezing elder by the hair, he declared him his hostage. The disciples of the Namgun clan watched helplessly as they were humiliated. In the old man's eyes flickered the last, phantom hope for life. A clawed hand gripped the victim's face with a deathly grasp. A dreadful red glow highlighted the finale of this bloody massacre. With a brutal jerk, the warrior tore the sinful tongue right from the old man's throat. With a cold-blooded gesture, the avenger brushed the remnants of blood from his palm. The mutilated body was thrown at the feet of the clan, and true panic immediately arose among them. The shocked masters recognized in the executioner the legendary caller to the underworld. Ho Yang froze in horror, encountering this ruthless warrior again. Against the backdrop of the night sky stood proudly the figure of the one who single-handedly rewrote the clan's fate. From beneath the wolf mask, a calm, piercing gaze looked at the girl. The revenge finally ended. Now she was free in her choice. Someone desperately tried to find a pulse in the tortured master. The leader officially announced, Elder Pension is dead. The death of a master of such rank became an unheard-of disgrace for the entire family. The clan had only to surround the killer while unconscious Yul lay among the ruins. Yal was breathing hoarsely. The toxins in her blood were supposed to disappear within half an hour. The warrior triumphantly raised the vial over the abyss, fully attracting the gaze of the enraged crowd below. The clan leader gritted his teeth. He did not believe a single word of the bloodied killer. The Avenger coldly warned the medicine was almost finished and its application required jeweler's precision. Had Namgun hesitated, the girl's life hung by a thread under the pressure of the blue aura. With a mocking advice to catch faster, the warrior simply unclenched his fingers and handed over the vial of gravity. The wolf swiftly dissolved into the darkness. The glass hit the stones while the killer was dissolving into the sky. The leader ordered to save the remnants of the antidote at any cost and immediately catch up with the legendary Zavachi. The pursuit started instantly. The famous heavenly network of the clan tightened around the fugitive. The warrior drew dark energy into his legs and prepared to break this ring with one powerful jerk. A red meteor cut through the formation. Elite students scattered in panic in all directions. Finally, the killer advised the enemies to hurry. He himself left the clan leader in the captivity of deadly despair. The master rushed in pursuit. He blindly rushed into the attack, but the warrior only gracefully danced among the enemy blades right in the very heart of their home. The warrior froze as soon as he recognized the former leader of the Murim alliance in the old man. The stranger gracefully landed on the roof amid mocking laughter. Against the backdrop of the moon stood the sword master, the legendary Namgun Jiang. The old man slowly descended, not stopping his whimsical performance. He ran his fingers through his beard, acknowledging the young man's considerable talent. The Avenger was drenched in cold sweat, feeling the breath of death behind him. He was pierced by the technique of the heart sword, one that kills by will alone. The warrior cautiously watched every move of the living legend. The master ironically inquired whether the guest was leaving too early. The irritated youth shot back a bold counter-question to the old man. He quickly glanced at the guards, calculating the chances of retreat. The elder abruptly jumped down into a cloud of dust, blocking the way. The time for relaxation was over. A real monster stood before the warrior. Namgun Jiang landed in a whirlwind of blue energy, craving the spectacle. The master pressed his palm to Yul's chest, releasing healing power. The girl instantly regained consciousness and coughed up a lump of black poison. The elder chuckled contentedly, seeing his intervention take effect. The disciples grabbed the lady and hurriedly pulled her to a safe place. Having healed the girl, the legend moved straight toward the masked warrior. The young man realized this monster could have stopped him from the very beginning. The absence of retribution indicated the hidden purpose of the old master. Namgun Jiang looked at the boy's sharp mind with feigned surprise. A predatory smile confirmed the suspicion. The old man was also enjoying the moment. The ring closed, the guards prepared for the final capture. The clan leader ordered to seize the audacious offender alive. Rage clouded the head of the family, who desired immediate retribution. The authoritative shout of the elder made the crowd of warriors freeze in shock. The father stood across the son's path and declared his rights over the prisoner. The clan head was forced to retreat under the pressure of the father's will. The eyes of the sword lord flared with fury. He would not let the best entertainment in 30 years be spoiled. The old man threw the sword over his back and silenced his son with a single contemptuous look. He proudly declared, in the Namgun estate his word is law, and for the emperor as well. The wolf warrior grimly listened to the pompous speech, not taking his eyes off the enemy. The sword lord thoughtfully ran his hand over his beard, devising a new rule for the guest. A sinister idea flashed in his eyes. He had caught the perfect entertainment. The elder strictly forbade any actions without his personal permission. The verdict was final. Leaving the clan territory was now forbidden. With his signature laughter, he imposed a personal taboo on the youth's exit. Assessing the chances of escape as negligible, the warrior demanded terms of release. Instead of explanations, the old man sharply thrust his palm forward and raised the wind. He offered a 5-move advantage, only evasion, no sword use allowed. The clan's disciples were stunned by such unheard-of generosity from their patriarch. The crowd could not believe that the legend valued an unknown killer so highly. The Avenger realized it was time to give his all for the mad elder. He swiftly launched an attack, accepting the terms of the deadly game. Under his feet, stones crumbled, releasing powerful red energy. The dark aura took the shape of a giant skull ready to swallow all living things. Namgun Jiang watched with excitement as true potential awakened. The youth fiercely demanded a worthy resistance from the legend in this duel. An energy whirlwind began to pull the frightened students into its epicenter. A demonic strike tore through the air, but the master gracefully dodged death. With a cheerful shout, the Sword King elegantly danced in the whirl of red lightning. A pillar of red fire tore the sky and forced the crowd to flee under the old man's laughter. The warrior froze on the ruins while blue lightning coiled around his spear. From beneath the mask, a predatory gaze read every weakness of the legend. The Sword King only raised his eyebrows in surprise, as if ignoring the scale of destruction. The youth poked the old man's hand with a finger. He instinctively grabbed the hilt, breaking the pair. The Lord of the Sword shuddered from his own weakness, feeling the power of the young enemy. The old man awkwardly justified his fear as a mere test of strength. The legendary giant sweated, vainly searching for a logical explanation for his fear. The embarrassed master suggested undoing the move to at least preserve a drop of honor. The Avenger cold-bloodedly refused any handouts. Namgun Jiang sincerely rejoiced at such audacity, swearing never to touch the sword again. Enveloped in blue flames, he proclaimed, the boy had only 4 attempts left. The old man's predatory smile promised true delight from the bloody dance. Radiating a divine aura, he invited the youth to play the last trump card. The old man stood before him like an invincible wall against which any anger shattered. The youth infused his next devastating strike with red energy, pouring his entire essence into it. The thunder from the spear striking the stones overshadowed the highest techniques of martial arts. The arena exploded with a fiery stream of the Yal power, shattering into fragments. The Sword King finally admitted he had fatally underestimated this boy. The elder barely managed to dodge the vertical streak of red flame. A deadly wave passed just millimeters from his face. The master showed wonders of agility, dodging a direct hit. He gathered all the aura in his palms to meet the next attack head-on. The clash of 2 elements threw the wolf warrior back with a powerful wave. Thick smoke billowed from the hands of the legend. The block absorbed the hellish heat. Namgun Jiang spoke of the iron fate that had woven them together in this fight. The sweaty youth only grimly cut in that such a fate was disgusting to him. The elder raised 3 fingers. The final trials awaited ahead. Ignoring the trembling in his hands, the warrior gripped the spear tighter for the decisive attack. A black-handed pillar of energy thundered down onto the arena under the fierce battle cry of the warrior. Namgun Jiang instantly realized, now a massive energy ram was charging at him. The Lord of the Sword raised a blue shield, heroically holding back the devastating pressure of the enemy's aura. The space around vibrated from the friction of 2 opposing elements. The explosion shook the residents, and the exhausted young man barely stood on his feet. The old man only rubbed his wrists, joking about old age and aches in the bones. He instantly read the boy's military past, and it greatly embarrassed him. The master saw in the movements of the enemy a hardened infantryman he had been through the hell of battles. Chan admitted, reaching such a level on one's own at this age is a true miracle. The young man boiled with rage because the legend saw his true nature through and through. The old man raised 2 fingers, giving the last chance for an honorable retreat. The warrior answered with a short no, and moved, beginning to spin a deadly whirlwind of weapons. Powerful gusts of wind fiercely tore the robes of the King of the Sword. The master laughed maniacally, savoring every second of the game. The black-red whirlwind surrounded the young man before the final, most powerful strike. The warrior's step literally tore the earth in half under the weight of his concentrated power. The eyes flashed red before the colossal horizontal strike. A wave of dark energy swept away everything in its path to the target. Namgun Chang crossed his veins-covered arms, preparing to receive the strike with a clean block. The flow of power crashed into the elder's block with cruelty. The legend's feet slid over the tiles under the relentless pressure of the enemy. The shockwave from the clash of titans shook the entire clan residence. The elder continued to retreat under the unstoppable inertia of the lunge. He warmed up his smoking hands, acknowledging the high quality of the striking 1,000 warriors technique. The exhausted young man only sighed hot air in disappointment. The sword master retreated only half a step, and this stunned even himself. Clan students froze, and unknown forced the unshakable legend to change stance. Namgun Jiang reminded, the boy had only 1 single move left. The master's eyes flared again, with blue death awaiting the finale. The warrior made a giant leap, leaving behind a bloody black trail in the sky. A giant mystical totem crashed down with a rumble. With a burning gaze, the youth emerged at a new peak of his power. Above him loomed a terrible ghost of a demonic beast, the 2nd degree of Yola's power. The Sword King shuddered. He felt the true danger of this aura. The warrior in a mask with a red flash rushed into his last battle. The son asked why the father drew the sword. The old man agreed, first instinct but in the end necessity. A shard of the blade clanged against a stone. The youth's strike was so devastating that the legend had to retreat and save his own life. The Lord of the Sword stood with smoking steel in his hands. He honestly admitted he was simply afraid of death. Before the eyes still stood a warrior in a wolf mask. For survival, the master had no other choice left. Deep shock covered Namgun's face. The realization of his own vulnerability painfully struck his pride. The elder stated if the boy had a real spear in his hands, not bamboo, he would not have survived. He recognized the staff of the slain Master Gungai. His death shook instantly mercilessly. Fragments of the blade clattered onto the floor. One's own life turned out to be more valuable than any hypocrisy. The master laughed at his own disgrace. The youth gave him a cruel but useful lesson. He was ashamed to look into the eyes of the Anhui heroes. The sons silently took up this burden of shame. A heavy pause firmly fixed the collapse of the great family's reputation. The disciples bowed in reverence and promised the guests to compensate for all damages. The clan had officially announced the end of the bloody banquet. The servants rushed to clean up the broken tables and overturned drums. The son wondered who this faceless ghost could be without a name and without an age. Namgun Jiang admitted, this unknown boy fought like a true scoundrel. The analysis was grim, the spear is cracking but the combat strategy reaches the level of gods. The clan's prestige fell to the very bottom, and the father's calm only irritated the son. The leader could not understand what benefit could be squeezed from such a total fiasco. The old man reminded, Elder Pen Shen was a splinter that they finally got rid of. The son tried to deny the father's cynicism, but he insisted on seeking advantage in everything. Every next step of the clan now had to be part of a great political game. The investigation began. The crimes of the dead elder became an indisputable fact. All the clan's mistakes were blamed on the corpse of Pen Shen. The reputation had not just to be restored but to soar. The traitor became the perfect victim to save the family's honor. Yul finally came to after the effect of the neutralized poison. The elder ordered the girl to catch the mysterious warrior alive at any cost. The son froze in confusion. Why does the father need this dangerous test for his daughter? The son was angry about Yul's dishonor, but the old man promised to find her a match himself. Namgun Jiang mocked the son's conservatism, urging to learn from the whole world. The clan leader pompously compared their lineage to an unbreakable tree. The father's icy gaze instantly cooled his pride. Under the weight of authority, the clan head became embarrassed and fell silent. The world of martial arts once again resembled a turbulent sea. The elder anxiously reported, Xinjiang has moved. At the mere mention of the name, the clan leader turned pale with mortal fear. The shadow of the demonic doctrine once again loomed over Murim. A grim warning about massive changes shattered the night silence. A great wave of chaos was preparing to engulf the celestial empire. The action moved to the grand estate of the gates of Kotsen. Autumn leaves were evenly swirling around the peaceful chambers. A hand carefully placed the ancestors' plaque on the altar. The man whispered a prayer for the repose of his brother. The revenge had finally been fulfilled. He promised to bear this heavy burden for the future of the school. Sudden surprise snatched the master from his thoughts. The exhausted youth without a mask disgustedly shook dirt from his hands. He confidently threw a bundle of hay to his comrade for the night. Brother Ho irritably prepared for sleep before the battle that was to be tomorrow. Disgust flared on his face as soon as he looked closely at the straw. The man furiously threw the hay, and it turned out to be infested with fleas. The young warrior only shrugged. Indifferently, warmth mattered more than comfort. A brief smile revealed how much he rejoiced at the presence of a true friend. An aromatic stick flared up before the altar in the silence of the night. The Avenger wished the deceased peace in the afterlife. The silence of the altar broke for a moment because a storm was already approaching. Heavy footsteps in the yard shattered the night's tranquility. A sinister shadow of an unknown guest covered the warrior's room. A mysterious silhouette in dark clothing confidently headed towards the door. A commanding order instantly made the young man activate the protective aura. The pursuer in a purple haze mockingly ridiculed the naive attempt to escape. Rage and despair were reflected on the face of the fighter, cornered. The mighty master continued to mock, looming over his victim. Cold sweat ran down the warrior's face. This encounter promised real trouble. The red wolf dashed across the rooftops, but a mocking voice caught up with him. Escaping after this would not be possible. The phantom beast broke into the ranks of the guards, scattering fighters with bloody energy. The frightened soldiers recognized the fugitive as the legendary Zavachi. He turned out to be the underworld. Pushing off directly from the air, the warrior soared into the sky above the heads of the stunned pursuers. Despite wounds and pain, the Avenger stubbornly rushed toward his goal through the night. Ahead rose the last obstacle, the massive outer wall of the Namgun estate. One jump separated him from freedom. His foot already touched the cherished tile. A sudden icy gust of wind made the warrior freeze. A premonition of trouble surged instantly. An invisible attack tore his back, a fountain of blood, and a muffled wheeze dragged the fall along. The young man clenched his teeth fiercely and growled curses as soon as he realized before him was a true madman. The shadow of the sword master loomed over him. The next step promised to be the last. An explosion of energy threw the warrior into the air, and he sharply turned to desperately resist. He fell on the roof amid the debris, cursing the appearance of the legend at the worst possible moment. Before his eyes flashed red-black death, the old man swooped down on him mid-flight. Namgun Jiang declared with a predatory laugh that he would not let the guest go so easily. Breaking his promise, the elder revealed a blue blade burning with divine power. The clash of two titans shook the sky, blending blue steel and red flame. A shining beam cut the dark aura of the wolf in half, showering the yard with sparks. The space split in two, pure will collided with uncontrollable rage. The shockwave of the frenzied hurricane swept away the guards like dry leaves. The warrior admitted the old man's inner strength truly matched the title of sword master. In a daring maneuver, the youth pushed off directly from the enemy sword's blade with his foot. He flipped in the air, preparing to turn the master's power against him. Like a red star, the warrior leapt over the wall and finally vanished into the night darkness. The elder lowered his weapon and, in response to the question about the pursuit, only sighed wearily. Near the gates of Kotsun, the traveler heard reproach. He tried to leave without saying goodbye. The man stopped on the forest path and briefly threw his friends a final "all right." To the question of the crying comrade, he answered succinctly, "His path lies to the west." The giant wept from the pain of parting. The traveler set off amid loud curses. The disciples begged him to definitely return, while the leader, through tears, vainly tried to find the road to the distant west. A grateful smile flashed under the hat. He easily flew over the roofs. The silhouette of the warrior majestically froze against the evening sky, amid the confused cries of the giant who remained far behind the residence. The sun illuminated the road to Hanani. The landscape changed to gloomy gates. A sudden premonition of a foreign presence made him instantly stop among the dark trees bending under the squall wind. The young man intently stared at the fallen leaves. Lightning tore the sky above the forest. Before him stood exhausted Yul. Her heavy breathing betrayed a too long and dangerous chase after the mysterious traveler. The girl shouted the name with her last strength. Shuji responded only with oppressive silence. She clenched the golden box and finally recognized in it the legendary killer 3 ranks to the Yellow Springs. Yul remembered the dog that was afraid of the warrior. The secret was revealed and Shuji himself was shocked. She knew about the medicine and about that very rainy day when he anonymously saved her life, paying an incredible price for the rescue. The girl recalled the familiar smell of manure. Playful laughter instantly eased the tension. The first heavy raindrops hit the ground dully, flooding the long and oppressive silence between two tired heroes. She thanked the warmth of the wormhood fire. Horses and conversations surfaced in memory. The girl recalled the risky game against the Black Knife Gang and influential families, the one where he was always her secret protector. He was involved in every high-profile case. Tears mixed with rain on her cheeks. The traveler silently pulled his hat even lower over his eyes, trying to hide forever from her painful questions under the cold wall of the downpour. Despair pushed the girl straight to the warrior. Fingers clung to his wet sleeve. The quiet plea not to go dissolved in the noise of water flowing from the mansion's roofs, leaving behind only the bitter taste of parting. She called him her family. A trembling hand squeezed the last thread. A trembling hand squeezed the last thread. The inevitable choice of her savior. He chose loneliness in this cruel world. The young man slowly walked along the wall. The dark silhouette finally dissolved into the veil of endless cold rain, taking with it all the secrets of this strange journey. Yul sobbed under the downpour, begging fate for one thing, be. The figure in the hat disappeared further while the girl whispered, happy. Bare feet froze in a cold puddle amid absolute emptiness. She sharply turned around, rushing forward. A fountain of splashes burst from beneath her movement, desperate, without stopping. The two parted ways, finally breaking the connection under the wall of rain. The straw hat flew off the traveler's head and, spinning, vanished in the whirlwind. The garment fell into the mud, and in this silence rang the promised bell of a new meeting. The eerie bamboo forest sank into icy fog and the whistle of the wind. The thickets shuddered from the rapid approach of an unknown force. Shadows in black rushed through the thicket, raising clouds of dust. The special unit Purple Moon set out to hunt the mysterious killer. The squad leader carefully tracked the traces, leaving no mistake unnoticed. She remembered her grandfather's order, find and bring the target alive. A blazing blue aura abundantly radiated her irritation from the elder's whimsical will. The woman tore off the mask, revealing the maniacal smile of a predator. She already saw the enemy pinned to the wall, ready for her bloody tortures. The report of found traces made her eyes flare with excitement. Trembling with excitement, she cast aside doubts for the sake of future triumph. The cold order's search further broke the forest silence. Black-blue energy cut through bamboo. The target had to be captured at any cost. A sadistic look and the promise to bring the victim to their knees ended this scene. A majestic river gorge opened before the tired traveler. The cracked edge of the cliff trembled under the heavy step of the wayfarer. Shuji wiped the sweat and, overcoming exhaustion after the grueling journey, exhaled shortly. His gaze fell on the floating market of Passy. Much time had passed since his last visit. The market was bustling. Merchants boasted of giant catfish and red lentils. The cook of the floating eatery warmly invited the traveler for a hot dinner. The guest threw a marten pelt on the table, but the angry cook demanded only money. The big man threatened to throw out the traveler, but he responded with icy silence. Little Pekreen suddenly slammed her fist on the table and threw payment for the soup. The girl brazenly counted coins right under the nose of the stunned cook. She stuck out a huge tongue, causing the traveler to freeze in surprise and watch the scene. Starting the meal, the young man immediately asked the savior if she was a beggar. She objected, although she recalled the maternal teaching about poverty. The traveler became interested in the name of his unexpected benefactor. The young man was on his way to Hanamu to shed the blood of numerous enemies there. The girl instantly recognized him as a master of martial arts. The mother often told her about the power of the mysterious Pecto Society. The traveler sank into gloomy thoughts and set aside the empty spoon. As a token of gratitude, he gave the little girl a valuable marten fur. Reen refused the expensive gift, but he insisted on an honest payment. Instead of money, the girl asked for a single favor. She begged the warrior to convince the masters to release her sick mother. The greedy cook tried to appropriate the pelt and, interrupting their conversation, got down to business. The spear tip instantly bit into the scoundrel's forehead and forced him to beg for mercy. The market trembled with panic. A bandit's ship docked at the pier. The robbers demanded all property, threatening violence. The traveler sighed irritably, while Reen hid behind his back. He tightly gripped the staff, promising the child to fulfill her wish. The young man decisively stood up to his full height, preparing for the inevitable fight. The girl watched with trembling excitement the formidable figure of her new protector. The traveler in the hat gripped the staff. The pirates cruelly pressed the old man to the deck. The leader Khan Sunhap only sneered mockingly, while the desperate screams of his next completely defenseless victim tore the silence. The old man naively waved the authority of Pecto. The deathly horror froze in his eyes. Khan Sunhap mercilessly cut down the captive, declaring that the mighty Pecto Society had long ago sold all these people to him into slavery. The sadist savored his power over the doomed. Panic swept the crowd. People suddenly realized they had been betrayed. Irritated by pleas for mercy, the boss ordered his dogs to immediately silence the noisy crowd with sharp steel. A bloody massacre of unarmed fishermen began. The pirates laughed as they chopped people into pieces. Suddenly, the confident expression on the leader's face changed to surprise due to the unexpected appearance of a mysterious traveler on the wooden pier. Through the downpour, a man in a hat walked confidently. The young man passed by the corpses amid the screams of Ryan. Two bandits blocked the way and, boldly declaring the traveler and the girl their property in this cursed territory of Passy, did not let them pass further. The traveler instantly swung a heavy bamboo staff. A devastating blow scattered the attackers, shielding the child. The bodies of the bandits fell into the water, while the hero disdainfully concluded, before him was only a pack of ordinary and worthless river rats. He returned to the leader words about the color of blood. Khan Sunhap ordered the archers to fire with all their might. The archers opened fire, promising to turn the enemy into a sieve. The traveler instantly deflected a hail of arrows with his own cloak. No projectile pierced his hardened armor. The young man soared into the sky, hurling deadly blades into the crowd. The bandits choked on their screams, bleeding from precise hits. Landing, he with one sweep of his staff knocked off the heads of the nearest enemies. The enraged leader demanded to know the name of the audacious stranger. Sunhap could not believe that his elite fell so disgracefully fast. The Avenger silently shook the blood off his weapon, showing complete indifference. The bandit suddenly changed his mind and proposed to part peacefully. He insisted that unnecessary deaths would benefit no one. A cold gaze from under the hat said, "Today only the leader will die." The young man only guessed whether his body would endure this bloody meat grinder. Sungkop went mad and, putting his own head at stake, struck again. He called the enemy a blind puppy and, calling down the wrath of a tiger on his own head, signed his own death sentence. The giant sword soared into the sky to unleash a devastating retribution. A dazzling flash of counterattack momentarily stopped the deadly strike. A shard of the blade soared into the sky, showing as a vivid reproach the abyss in their strength. The severed hand of the leader splashed into the water under his silent groan. The traveler just adjusted his hat and mocked the pitiful whining of the river rat. The young man adjusted his straw hat. These bandits looked better at the bottom of the river. The giant shuddered, the wrist hung like a whip. One blow and the master was broken. The red aura pressed on the pier. The bandit realized he must flee immediately. A mountain of corpses covered the dock. While the leader panicked, the child ran and searched for his mother. There was no pity in the boy's eyes. Begging for mercy was too late. With a cry of despair, the bandit struck. The youth calmly raised a block. The enemy snarled, threatening the arrival of the elder Handu. The boy glanced indifferently. He promised to kill him before reinforcements arrived. The giant grinned brazenly. The fight was already starting to amuse him. The boards cracked under the weight of the beast. It lunged in a final attack. The staff flickered in the air. The youth easily parried every strike. A wide, sinister smile suddenly flashed on the bandit's face. The villain grabbed the little hostage. He ordered to stop, otherwise the girl would die. The bandit ordered to kneel. The boy froze, bowing his head. Little Reen trembled. Suddenly she heard her name. The young man apologized to the child. He could not let the killers go even for her sake. Reen smiled through tears. She only asked to save her mother. A brief nod, the promise remained. The boy sprang into the air. The bandit froze in surprise. A shadow covered the young man's face. He let the enemy kill, but only for one price. Cold light in the eyes, he promised the bandit the worst death in the world. The voice became ice. The boy detailed how he would skin the enemy. Animal terror gripped the giant. Fire tortured, and eternity awaited in the pigsty. The villain tried to hide behind the names of the elders. The answer was short, no. The bloody aura turned into claws. The entire Sado Ryan will come for his soul. The giant shrank. The hostage no longer gave him strength. Reen felt her executioner uncontrollably trembling. Death froze in the bandit's eyes. The boy only reminded of his sentence. The wave of the staff cut through the air. Time to go to the pigs. The merchant sobbed, praising the unknown savior. Others objected. They were protected by an old man with a whip. Testimonies faltered. Someone mentioned a silent giant. Fantasies multiplied images of bearded heroes and superhumans. The female master tried to organize this chaos on the shelves. Before her eyes stood the killer of clans. He was definitely not a righteous man. Yet it was he who cleared the pier of bandits. She hesitated, noble avenger or ordinary thief. Suddenly the cold of death clutches her throat. A shadow in the skull threatened to cut everyone out, starting with the child. The woman shuddered. A voice in the darkness assured, he is not an enemy. Reen confidently stood up to defend the boy beggar. Figures in cloaks grew on the slope. The leader rushed down. Familiar colors made the woman tense sharply. The commander gave the order for the squad to stop. Before the crowd stood the warriors of the Union of Schools. She bowed and refused, citing personal matters at home. The representative of the union met the academy instructor with surprise. The purpose of the visit was grim. They were chasing a dangerous fugitive. What she heard made her heart stop. The criminal killed his own sister and became a dog of the devil's cult. The alliance of the Namgun clan called for urgent help. The woman politely refused and waited until the head of the household made a decision. The commander retreated, yielding to the name of the Elder Sword. An order to accelerate the pace was heard. The assassin was very close. The squad disappeared into the darkness under the watchful gaze of the guards. The squad in cloaks moved downstream. The trail of their target led straight through Passy. The woman realized the route of the elusive villain strangely coincided with the path of the deadly plum blossom. She suspected that it was the plum blossom who dealt with the outpost guards. The woman ordered the people to only observe and not interfere in the fight. Her gaze hardened like steel. The true mission of the squad was far more important than random skirmishes. Tension was rising. Their goal remained unchanged. The boy in the hat jumped down to the lonely grave. Fresh food and wine were already lying nearby. A rustle in the reeds made him turn sharply. A stranger emerged from the shadow. The long-haired swordsman introduced himself as a traveler and politely apologized for the intrusion. The boy squinted. He was curious about who and for whom these gifts were left. The stranger did not know the name of the deceased, but this only intensified the youth's suspicions. The swordsman simply felt pity for the abandoned soul in this forgotten place. A predatory smile spread across his face. He suddenly sat down nearby and held his weapon at the ready. The black blade plunged into the ground. the stranger paid deep respect to the one who died. He noted the boy's nobility and promised him a generous reward. The traveler extended his priceless sword as a gift for the shown respect to the grave. Laughter burst out from under the hat. The youth replied, "The head of a guest is worth 10 times more." The boy's fingers gripped the weapon's shaft with a death grip. His eyes flashed red. He ordered the enemy to finally draw the steel. The air vibrated with the thirst for murder. The young man recognized John, the legendary Plum Blossom. The head of such a criminal was worth 1,000 gold coins, much more than any blade. The grip on the black shaft tightened. The fight was inevitable. Meanwhile, the river was filled with boats. The bandits were ordered to kill everyone indiscriminately. One of the robbers noticed figures on the shore and froze in place. The crowd shouted and rushed into the water. The riverway outpost came for its revenge. John slowly drew his sword. He was interested in only one thing: who the young man was to his father. "No one," came the cold reply. The swordsman paled with suspicion. Coincidences of this level do not happen. He took a stance, listing the dishes on the grave. These were exactly what his late father adored. The boy stepped forward, wrapped in a dark aura. He also liked such a menu. Rage twisted John's face. He was not going to believe these tales. The boy indifferently scratched his chin. Whether to believe or not was everyone's own business. The cries of bandits tore the silence. The inspired crowd rushed into attack. John was making his way through the enemies as if through fog. He was only interested in the youth's route. "Hanan," a brief answer against the backdrop of bloody petals. The sword cleaved the robbers in half. Mount Huashan was very close. The question of revenge only provoked a predatory smile. He was looking for the one who had become almost a teacher to him. John irritably parried the strike. Words too vague. The world is complex. Some connections had no names. A bloody massacre began. 2 masters turned the battlefield into a whirlwind of death. The youth's weapon flared crimson. It was time to end the conversation. The demonic dragon broke free. John's questions remained unanswered. Clash of Titans. The explosion of energy threw back all living things. Swordsman of the 5-colored plum. The youth acknowledged the enemy's strength. Rage blinded John. This name was a curse for him. A wave of red energy covered the shore. The boy barely held back the onslaught. Why did the proud name become a burden? Killer of his own sister, traitor who defected to the cult of demons. John's sword flared with hellish flames. A storm was approaching. The air became oppressive. The aura of death shifted. A leap, illusory flowers of the deadly plum blossomed in the air. A deadly rain of petals fell upon the target. Even wounded, John remained a monster. The shockwave pressed the youth into the ground. The flower technique tore through stone and flesh. It was chaos where reality caused confusion with illusion. Focusing, the boy searched for the only way out. The true goal was hidden behind a wall of pink petals. The red-haired giant burst into attack through the plum petals. A dull blow sounded. The swordsman barely held back the boy's black staff. Steel clanged under the pressure of wood. A sharp thrust threw the enemy back. John barely stayed on his feet. The bloodied master breathed heavily, leaning on his blade. The boy coldly stated, with a healthy hand he would have already taken the opponent's head off. An eye under the hat flashed ominously. The youth nodded. The rules of the game had changed. The wounded swordsman shouted a curse, but the boy had already intercepted the weapon. The sky was cut by signal rockets. The Alliance hounds squeezed them into a ring. John froze. New shadows emerged from the darkness. The trap snapped shut. Warriors in cloaks besieged the shore. It became clear the slaughter on the pier was not accidental. The masters found themselves in the very center of a 3-way battle amid piles of corpses. The young man asked if the Plum Blossom had led the Namgun clan hunters behind her. The warriors recognized the red-haired deserter Huashan, the weapon of doom. Bleeding, John proposed a temporary alliance to the 2 exiles. He pointed to the boats by the shore. It was their only chance to break free. A brief nod, the young man agreed to the plan. The swordsman rushed into the water, calling his partner to hurry. Suddenly, the whistle of air from behind made him shudder with horror. A demonic skull hovered over the victim. The young man struck the staff down on the ally's back. A cry of betrayal tore through the night. John did not expect such treachery. Bloody Flash, the swordsman, was killed face down in the ground. The young man only mocked. The villain was too easily fooled by a cheap trick. The boy roughly grabbed the unconscious body by the collar. A demonic aura blazed. He remembered another master he also paid dearly for trust. Despair clouded John's mind, turning him into easy prey. The young man ironically advised the enemy not to be ashamed of his defeat. The woman from the Namgun clan froze in shock at what she saw. The second warrior stepped forward and demanded explanations for this madness. Commander Namgun gave the order, immediately capture the young man. Swords flashed out of their sheaths, and the fighters froze in horror. A heavy staff smashed the moored boat to splinters. The woman shuddered. This boy was a real psycho. The young man threw the body of John over his shoulder. He finished off the remaining vessels and set off. The woman went mad. She ordered not to let him go with water. The clan warriors rushed straight across the surface of the river, chasing the fugitive. The boy struck the water with his staff. A column of splashes blinded the pursuers. A giant wall of water threw the squad back. The road was clear. The woman master called the elite. It was time to go all in. The squad leader rushed into the boat. He demanded to hand over the flowers of death. The young man blocked the blow. A pink flash of energy tore through the night. The warrior threatened the alliance with wrath over the kidnapping of a common enemy. The boy did not listen. With a strong blow, he threw the commander overboard. He slid over the waves and, turning around, looked at his subordinates. At a single glance at the boat, the man's blood ran cold. Behind the boy grew a gigantic demonic silhouette. From under the straw hat burned the red eyes of the killer. The current flowed slowly. The hunter still had a chance to catch the fugitive. Grinding his teeth, the leader ordered to search for any surviving vessel. The chase continued under the cover of deep darkness. The downpour began. The mountains hid behind a wall of rain. That night, Hungun and Aiko died. The man bent over the body of his friend. He mourned the loss, recalling their first meeting. Suddenly a voice asked if he was a disciple of the right messenger. Before him stood General Wu Zian. The demonic doctrine had found its heirs. In the box lay the head of the traitor, the one who once plunged the world into chaos. The general burned the remains of the enemy. Now he became indebted to the young warriors. In the light of the bonfire, Wu Zian bowed in reverence. It was he who was the legendary Flowers of Death. Wu Zian had too much honesty for the demonic cult. The boy stood before him in a fiery circle of rocks. Tension scorched the air before the inevitable slaughter. Steel clashed. The pursuers trembled with horror under a shower of petals. A blood-pink slash of the sword scattered the enemies like trash. The young man secretly watched from the shadows. He was learning, although none of them recognized another as a teacher. The blade folded into the sheath. Wu Zian was told, "If you can't keep up, get out." The boy rushed forward. He would leave only when he had taken all the knowledge. The swordsman's face remained stone-like both in conversation and in combat. But one day, in the middle of tall grass, he changed. They stopped near the old grave of Wu Zian's father. The swordsman sadly remembered the old man's favorite dish. He never managed to bring it. Only the quiet whisper of the wind promised to repay this debt later. Yu Qian suddenly asked, "If I die, bury me nearby." The young man nodded gloomily, begging not to invite trouble with words. Fear pierced reality. The promise was never fulfilled. Before his eyes appeared the bloodied head of the dead master. The mentor's head fluttered on the mast under mocking banners. A raven settled on the crown. 91 enemies and 32 wounds the price of his death. The mutilated face was displayed near the Huashan gates so the crowd could gloat. The body was dismembered and thrown into the river. The youth's rage flared with black flame. The time had come to repay the debt. The spear was again in his hands. The Huashan stairs trembled with panic. The school was attacked by an unknown. Metal scraped against stone, a merciless answer to all questions. One man broke through the defense. The shadow of death covered the gates. The warriors recognized the old spear. The aura of the killer pulsed with hatred. The elder turned pale. A whisper ran through the crowd, "King of the Spear." The Grey Master could not understand why the legend had reached their doorstep. Cold steam escaped from the lips. He came for the remnants of the Flowers of Death. A demon grew behind his back. Since then, the king became the demon of the spear. John suddenly woke up in a cold sweat. It was only a terrible dream. John woke up by the fire. Before him sat his recent executioner. The swordsman fiercely clenched his teeth under the icy gaze of the youth. The back of the head was splitting with pain. John did not understand who this stranger was. Shame surfaced in memory, a blow in the back and a face in the mud in front of the enemies. The youth reminded him he is the only reason the swordsman is still breathing. Fish crackled appetizingly over the fire. Hunger overcame pride. John began to eat, shifting anger to mercy. He suddenly bowed his head. The first "thank you" sounded sincere. The debt of life lay on John's shoulders. The young man saw in it a genius who once shook the world. The question about the reason for the chase was asked directly. The answer was bitter. The world considered him a murderer and rapist of his own sister. The young man objected. He felt that could not be. The stranger's trust struck John more strongly than the betrayal of loved ones. A heavy silence fell between them. The cave walls reliably sheltered them from the night wind. The swordsman asked for a moment of attention. He decided to reveal the true truth. Even the legends of past life did not know this story. There was a young man, began his story Ojan. It was a truth the world preferred not to notice. The young Wu Zian swiftly dealt with his opponent in the tournament arena. The fallen enemy acknowledged the strength of the future master. The tournament ended with the absolute victory of the wandering warrior. The crowd roared, chanting the name of the new hero. The reward was worthy marriage to the beauty Jiangya. The bride's gentle gaze promised a happy future among the petals. He became an invincible shield for the new family, covering the battlefield with the corpses of enemies. Stately, wealthy, and incredibly powerful. The world knew him as the Jade Dragon. Ojan sadly confirmed this fact. The young man sought to find out what had destroyed this perfect life. The dragon's glory reached even the elders of the great Huashan school. The young man was invited to Huashan. He became a Taoist and received the honorary guardian sword. The golden times began, the mentors were recognized, and among the brothers there was sincere respect. And at home, his beloved wife always awaited him. But the idol was shattered. Ojan clenched his teeth to a grind by the campfire. His younger training sister, Yue Menian, watched the stranger's happiness intently from afar. A tear rolled down her cheek as her heart broke with pain. They were considered the perfect duo and called Wu and Yue of Huashan. One day he approached her with an unexpected request. The young man awkwardly asked what gifts women usually like. Menian froze, she did not expect such a question. Blushing with embarrassment, the girl advised buying a hairpin. Brother joyfully grabbed her by the shoulders and thanked her for the help. He happily rushed to buy a gift, and she remained trembling from his touch. Winter came. At the snowy market, the girl saw her brother again. She wanted to call him, but suddenly froze. Joy turned into horror in an instant. What she saw immediately pulled her world into complete darkness. The young man gently smiled at his wife, not noticing the sister in the crowd. The couple moved on, dissolving into the winter hustle. The cold wind swept away the tracks. The girl tried to erase this moment from memory like a terrible dream. Since then, she stopped talking to him and even avoided joint training sessions. The young man did not understand why he was being ignored and demanded explanations. Then Menon confessed she loved him from the very first meeting. Every training session only intensified her unbearable feelings. She begged to be taken at least as a concubine just to be near. Only cold shock was reflected on the brother's face. He began to avoid her even more, leaving the girl alone with her grief. The young man fell to his knees before the patriarch, begging permission to leave the mountains. But that very night a true tragedy struck. The log cracked in the flames. It all began on a similarly moonless night. Ojan clenched his teeth. The past burned him with pain again. His eyes filled with blood. That day his wife was treacherously poisoned. Yu Zian burst into the room. The patriarch was already waiting inside. Cold sweat blurred his eyes. The young man did not understand where his father was while his daughter was dying. The head of the school grabbed his son-in-law by the collar and accused the sword guardian of worthlessness. The young man retreated under the icy gaze of the elders crushed. Pale Jiang I lay in the coffin. A thin trickle of blood froze on the lips. The pupils narrowed from shock. Only a dead ringing stood in the ears. A cry of despair tore the silence of the room. He lost his world. 3 years passed. The wind howled over the lonely grave in the cemetery. In Xian, he hid from people in a straw hut near his wife. Suddenly Menian appeared. Through tears, she called her older brother. The girl fell into the embrace. She begged, stop the mourning and finally start living. Her fingers slid over his face. She wanted him to belong only to her. The young man pushed her hand away with disgust. He burst into the night darkness, ignoring his sister's desperate cries. Loyalty proved stronger than temptation. He spent the night under the cold dew at the foot. The next morning he was arrested without any explanations and without mercy. Rage blazed in Ojan's eyes. The trap closed instantly. The bound hero knelt. The elder's shadow covered the Huashan courtyard. A formidable warrior with a massive sword stood opposite yesterday's favorite. Attempts to learn the truth were stopped by a harsh order to remain silent. A terrible accusation was made, rape and murder of Menian. The crowd demanded blood. Yesterday's brothers cursed his name and demanded death. Tears of injustice choked the young man. He was thrown into the very heart of a terrible slander. He tried to prove his innocence, admitting even the smallest sins. As a sign of his honesty, he cut off his own hand, but the lie proved stronger than flesh. In the flickering firelight sat the outcast. Thus was born the Plum Blossom Killer. Ojan clenched his fist in anger. The mark of the plum blossom on his sister's chest meant one thing: the sword guardian was the killer just like him. The young man only thoughtfully touched his lips. The skillful trap worked perfectly. The swordsman recalled years of wandering. Even those from whom he sought salvation tried to betray him to the Alliance. The orthodox schools turned out to be mere trash. the demonic cult became the only way out. If the world baptized him as a demon, he would become one. Ojan tightly gripped the sword's hilt. In the cult, he was to gather strength for revenge. A bloody aura covered the cave. The swordsman swore to tear apart the one who ruined his family. The boy listened to this confession in deafening silence. Suddenly, he silently pointed deep into the tunnel. Ahead lay the Kayakan airspace, the border of Hubei province. The young man promised to show a secret path straight to Xinjiang, the stronghold of the demonic doctrine. His predatory gaze left no room for doubt. Ojan shuddered. He did not know what drove the savior and suspected him of being a member of the cult. The young man ignored the question. Putting on his hat, he set only one condition. The swordsman had to keep up with him or scatter in all four directions. Ahead was Hubei, the domain of the Wudang school. Ojan barely contained his panic. Alliance nets were spread everywhere. The young man immediately found the question of how to bypass the wall absurd. The plan was insane, just break through by force. A breakthrough, an instant counterattack, and the complete destruction of the elite hunter squad. Ojan froze. It sounded like pure suicide. Logic whispered it was impossible. They had neither the strength nor the means. The swordsman exploded with a scream. He remembered the deadly danger of the heavenly nets. For the young man, the Muram elite was just a pack of dogs. The breakthrough seemed to him too easy a task. Ojan completely lost the power of speech from such confidence. The boy intercepted the staff. His companion had not yet realized the true scale of this war. A short order and the young man set off into the darkness. He promised to be behind the wall by noon. Ahead rose the massive gates of Kayachin, surrounded by a crowd. The murmur of voices and the crush prevailed in the queue for inspection. Suddenly, an old merchant with a huge box began aggressively pushing through the crowd. Burly men stopped the insolent doctor. The old man only snorted contemptuously. Instead of apologies, he began rummaging through the rags. The official scroll was thrust right into the face of the crowd. Tongagun, the personal doctor of the Pekto Union. The crowd froze in stupor. Feeling his power, the old man began to disperse people with a stick and threaten in the name of Lord Takanya. Suddenly, he was pulled by a quiet voice behind his back. A ragged beggar muttered. The doctor was already peering into the grave, but still meddled in other people's affairs. The old man swung at the insolent one, but words about the past made him stop. A sinister smile flashed under the hat. The beggar remembered the snake killed on the road. The youth's boot confidently poked the doctor's right leg. The dark aura of the snake settled on the old man's shoulders. The spirit was avenging its death. The doctor gasped from the illusory weight that suddenly fell and began to press on his bones. A terrible whisper broke out. Right by the earth spirit was already descending lower. The shadow of the snake wrapped around the body and crawled to the right leg. It had to rot first. The leg flared with red pain. The old man screamed in panic. A giant silhouette of a demon loomed over the victim. The doctor fell to his knees and begged for salvation. The youth gave a last chance to forever forget about home in order to save the family from the curse. The old man sobbed, swearing to live righteously anywhere, just not to die. The boy feigned a sigh. He had to rescue the unfortunate one. The doctor's eyes flashed with hope before the heavenly secret. The order was brief: immediately abandon all property and flee without looking back. 3 months on the mountain without clothes or food, only this way could the snake be thrown off the trail. The youth's gaze became unbearable. Only a little remained the most important. A finger pressed into the doctor's hand. She tightly gripped the paper. The past stank of a person and attracted a demon. It had to be gotten rid of first. The old man, buried in fear, tore off his rags and threw the document aside. Left in his underwear, he trembled with fear before the wrath of the Pekto Union for the lost herbs. The youth was already gathering the prey. He promised to settle everything himself while the doctor fled into the forests. The youth adjusted his disguise. Now he was Dr. Tongagun, heading to the Pekto Union to save the mother of the chief and his own skin. The real doctor wept with gratitude while the boy with the box disappeared into the crowd, throwing back at the last moment, "Run faster than death." The black-red illusion of the snake dissipated. The pass remained in hand, and the frightened old man was already scurrying away in his underwear. The document gave full freedom, no mention of a search, only an order to deliver the medicine. Amid loud shouts, the young man calmly crossed the massive city gates. The guards trembled. A rumor spread that the flower of death was already nearby. The warriors swore to lay down their lives to stop the thief, unaware that he had just passed by them. In the alley, the box and hat were thrown into the mud. The young man tightly gripped the faithful spear. The time for the true face had come. The city was littered with Huashan ambushes. To break through further, he needed chaos. the gaze fixed on the pagoda with red lanterns, the perfect place to raise a loud commotion. At the Fu Chai Tower they lived large, wine flowed like a river, laughter never ceased. The doors shattered into splinters, the young man rushed into the hall like an enraged demon. Panic covered the establishment. The guy boldly demanded the best meat, wine, and female attention. The locals showered him with curses, not believing that anyone dared such impudence. The roar of discontent grew. No one dared to misbehave with impunity on the lands of the Pecto Union. Ignoring the crowd's barking, the young man sat down at the table like a master. His feet shot onto the tabletop. He waited for the order, ignoring the murderous glances. One of the visitors mockingly asked if the ragamuffin had even a penny to his name. The short answer, no, unexpectedly sparked the courtesan's interest. They were ready to forgive everything to the handsome man. The women surrounded the boy, promising wine at their own expense. The young man only raised an eyebrow in surprise. Suddenly the table shook under the giant's fist. The merriment stopped. The giant loomed over the target, raging and breaking down the door. The young man only snarled fiercely in response. Before the enemy could finish speaking, a heavy jug smashed his face into a bloody mess. The boy casually wiped off the splashes. This rude fellow had too many unnecessary words. The hall exploded with shouts. The bandits rushed into a fight, greedy for blood, the brash ruffians. Instead of arrows, ordinary chopsticks flew into the air. The master had turned them into projectiles. Sticks pierced the flesh through and through. Bandits screamed in pain and did not understand how a tree could kill. The young man spun in the very center of chaos, snatching new weapons right out of the air. His eyes flashed with a deadly gleam. He drove splinters into the bodies of enemies, leaving only groans behind. In the middle of the bloodied hall, the boy slowly approached the last survivor. He only begged for mercy. Without hesitation, the young man thrust a stick into the bandit's eye. The establishment shook from the frenzied scream. The boy pulled out the bloody splinter. His gaze made the crowd freeze. The children were ordered to play quieter. Mr. Yukto appeared on the balcony. The wounded begged him with tears for retribution. The scarred man looked at the fight as if it were trash. The tower's master demanded silence. The young man snarled fiercely. Pecto finally swallowed the bait. Now it would be easier to bring out the flower of death. Yukto could not believe his own ears. This puppy boldly contradicted him. A red aura flared around the boy. The performance was just beginning. The master's hand lay on the hilt. The last warning choked in tension. The boy only smiled even wider, openly provoking the enemy. Yukto asked again, blinded by his own pride. The young man promised, from now on it would be too noisy here. While the enemy was drawing his steel, the boy theatrically pondered. He put the stick to his lips, pretending sudden submission. Yukto grinned triumphantly. He took the cunning maneuver for fear. Instead of please, a massive chair crashed into the master's head. Yukto smashed the wood with his fist, not taking his eyes off the insolent one. A sudden lunging, the young man was already breathing in the enemy's face. The shine of the sticks blinded the master, who was really going to die here. Steel did not save. The wood pierced the throat through and through. The last wheeze stopped, and that was all. The young man threw the staff over his shoulder and thoughtfully stared at the body of the former leader. Pecto Society, a formidable name that kept the entire district in fear. The second power of the province after Yuden, ruled by the ruthless Yuge family. Their influence was based on blood and the dirtiest affairs of the region. Human trafficking was the heart of their bloody empire. The Fuche Tower rose directly on the bones of kidnapped victims. In the center of luxury rested Gung's Dao, the assistant to the head of the union. He enviously studied the portrait of John, the legendary Jade Dragon. The narcissistic Dao could not stand it when someone was recognized as more handsome than him. The flattery of courtesans instantly calmed his wounded ego. Gungs twitched in surprise, breaking away from the entertainment. He rushed to the gloomy girl nearby and, demanding her name, pressed her with his gaze. With a trembling voice, she introduced herself, Lixian. Her relatives were sold to a brothel, and the girl lived in mortal terror every day. Gunsi harshly mocked her grief. For her family, everything was already over. He roughly grabbed her by the chin and promised the same fate if she did not improve. A sudden bang on the door made everyone flinch. A frightened servant flew into the hall with alarming news. The gray-haired commander realized some madman was breaking through the guard. The door shattered into pieces. A young man with a spear burst inside, sweeping away the barrier. The guard could not believe his ears. The attacker passed through the elite soldier Ludo. The boy threw the battered body straight onto the table, smashing expensive dishes. Ludo lay in a pool of blood under the screams of horrified comrades. The commander of the guard went mad and gave the order for immediate retribution. For every wound on the attacker's body, silver was promised, and for a limb 10 times more. The price on the madman's head rose to 100 lion. An armed crowd madly rushed at the young man. The spear spun in a deadly whirlwind, tearing through space with a black-red aura. Steel clashed with steel in a dazzling flash of energy. The young man's cold gaze promised swift and bloody revenge. With a dreadful crunch, the weapon broke the skull of the first attacker. Blood splattered on the walls. The commander froze and watched the slaughter unfold. Another bandit fell onto the blood-stained floor with a broken face. The gray-haired warrior realized before him was not an ordinary rogue but a deadly threat. The young man acted like a perfect killing machine. Demonic light in the ice and sharp projectiles shredded the flesh of the enemies. The bandits began to retreat in panic before the professional executioner. Fingers tightly gripped the bloodied shaft. There was no mercy. The boy tore the spear from the flesh. The enemy wheezed, and the youth was already waiting for the next ones. Two lunged with curses. The youth indifferently crushed the wounded man's throat with his foot. One swift attack, 2 bodies flew apart in blood. The guards froze. The madman covered himself with the corpse of their comrade like a shield. The commander nodded to the fighter named Erdo. Time for the elite. 2 warriors soared into the air, squeezing the target in a vice. The youth reacted instantly. The attackers were stunned by his speed. A strike with the staff, a kick to the jaw. Their teamwork was good but not perfect. Eyes flashed red. The boy snatched a dart, time to finish faster. A whistle cut through the air. The projectile pierced the entire hall. Gunsi screamed in horror, looking death straight in the face. The loyal guard rushed to intercept, shielding the master with his body. Steel pierced the arm through and through. Guns cowered in the corner behind the servant. The wounded warrior bled profusely, protecting only the safety of his lord. Suddenly, he felt a deadly cold behind his back. The spear tip broke free from his chest with a crunch. A demonic aura covered the room. The young man ironically remarked that he loved arranging such barbecues. The young man with the bloodied staff inexorably approached the wounded enemy. The old mercenary caught his gaze while the boy was figuring out the reasons for the attack. The warrior tightly gripped his sword, remaining faithful to his duty until the end. He realized his helplessness while his master trembled from shock in the background. The frightened aristocrat screamed, demanding immediate retribution against the audacious young man. Ildo admitted resistance was futile, as the bodies of his comrades already covered the floor. He fell to his knees, making his final decision. The young man froze, trying to comprehend the strange behavior of the old warrior. The mercenary chose death by his own blade, begging only not to waste time. A sharp swing, and the old man's blood splattered everywhere like a bloody fountain. The bloodied hero stood over the corpse with a completely indifferent face. The lord struggled in a pool of blood, while the boy marveled at the futility of such a sacrifice. The death of the sole defender plunged the coward into a state of complete hysteria. A red aura flared. The young man roughly grabbed the lord by the hair and pulled him upward. Gold spilled into the puddle, but the killer did not allow the life to be ransomed. The boy swung for a strike. His interest was not in wealth. The staff crashed into the tree with a roar, swallowing the victim's scream. Sobs and cries of pain shattered the silence of the ruined house. A series of devastating blows turned the gentleman's face into a complete mess. Through the flames of the fire, the young man calmly picked up the red hat from the floor. He gave the enemy life only as a tribute of respect to the loyalty of the late Ildo. The coward's gratitude choked on a new portion of blood from a sudden blow. Shock blinded the man's mind when another attack struck his body. A disgusting crunch was heard. The young man cold-bloodedly broke his legs. The broken aristocrat writhed in the flames from unbearable agony. The executioner sat down nearby, promising, "The real torment is only just beginning." A merciless gaze and tightly clenched weapon foretold inevitable retribution. The hand again swiftly rose amid the desperate scream of the doomed. The young man poured poison directly into the victim's throat and watched as they writhed in death convulsions. The young man sharply turned around, leaving the enemy to writhe in the fire and choke on the smoke. He cast a glance at the dead mercenary. The promise to spare his lord's life was fulfilled. The boy left the hall, throwing a remark that the ignorance of servants always leads to disaster. Through the veil of flames, silhouettes emerged. The path was blocked by strangers. 3 women in elegant dresses fiercely demanded explanations for the chaos caused. They hysterically accused him of destroying their home and depriving them of work. The young man advised them to put an end to this cheap masquerade and get out. With a powerful spear swing, he pushed the insolent ladies away with an air wave. He cynically remarked that the concepts of justice or heroism were completely foreign to him. The boy indifferently walked past, leaving the women alone with their fear. Suddenly, sincere gratitude burst from the crowd, and he fell silent, pausing for a moment. One of the girls cried with happiness. Finally, she had a chance to return home. The image of a child surfaced in his memory, who once mistook him for an ordinary beggar. The young man barely smiled and disappeared into the darkness, denying his own kindness. The giant tower turned into a torch, illuminating the night sky with sparks. The city guard watched the fire but did not dare to enter the bandits' territory. Panic was growing, the flames rapidly spread to neighboring buildings. The captain ordered to draw water immediately, trying to stop the inevitable disaster. The soldiers rushed to the wells, but two strangers blocked their way. The officer stopped the young man in the hat and suspiciously stared at his companion. The boy pretended to be Dr. Pecto and demanded immediate entry to the city. The guard refused. Without orders from above, entry was strictly forbidden. The young man instantly grabbed the captain's clothes, skillfully imitating deadly panic. He lied about a mutilated aristocrat who urgently needed to escape from poison. Fear of the leader's anger made the captain turn pale with horror and despair. The hero pressed on the officer's hesitation, offering the only way to save his career. Cunning eyes flashed from under the hat. The trap for the trusting guard snapped shut. The captain nervously weighed the risks, fearing to make a fatal mistake. Finally, the heavy gates opened and let the impostors right into the heart of the city. The young man and his companion passed the guard, but the overly polite tone immediately aroused suspicion. A sharp shout instantly pinned them to the spot under the heavy gaze of the guard. The guard jerked, immediately state the name of the mysterious giant. While the boy was silent, his partner made an unexpected move. The blood in the soldier's veins froze as soon as he felt a powerful deadly aura. Behind the bandages on the face, he recognized an ordinary servant from the local eatery. The companion skillfully played on weakness, explaining the young man's presence by saying he came with medicine. Believing the lie, the guard ordered, "Get out before the gates close." The fugitives quickened their pace, leaving the hostage behind. Heavy gates slowly closed, cutting off the way back. The clatter of iron put an end to their audacious breakthrough. In the forest thicket, a true servant was dying of terror under the threats of a stranger. The mutilated prisoner only helplessly sobbed, saying goodbye to life. The man in red removed the disguise, satisfactorily outlining the perfect plan. He praised the ease of the breakthrough and savored the success of this adventure. The companion enthusiastically confirmed the tower arson was only part of a diversion maneuver. The mad plan testified that the young man was trained by a true master of his craft. The man tried to extract the name of the teacher who raised such a daring warrior. However, in response, he received only cold and heavy silence. A flame flared in the boy's memory, and it forever erased the name of his mentor. A sudden insight pressed the hero on the brake. He stopped for a moment. The companion continued to ponder how complex their plan was. He called the boy a true hero who saves the weak from trouble. The townspeople's shouts about the arsonist psychopath sharply broke the pompous mood. The silent reproach in the youth's gaze made the man awkwardly fall silent. The boy curtly said that it was time for dinner and turned towards the building. As soon as they sat at the table, the partner greedily pounced on the food, forgetting all worries. The youth ordered the companion to be silent and finally eat. The partner greedily chewed, inquiring about the news of the recent fire in the tower. Around, they gossiped. The singers lost their jobs and the arsonist became enemy number one. But the rumor about the cruelty of Lord Dao's maiming raised glee in the crowd. People laughed, celebrating the tyrant's suffering, while the heroes silently dined. The young man kept an icy calm, ignoring the festive noise around. The companion felt the tension and tried to cheer up the serious boy. He philosophically acknowledged, "A true warrior protects the weak from the greed of the strong." The partner once again assured, the young man's action was absolutely correct. A sudden scream cut off the speech. Fear gripped the man, paralyzing him. Behind him grew a gigantic shadow, burning eyes and heavy weapon. The monster fiercely demanded to hand over the one who dared to gossip about his clan. The giant gripped the head of one of the visitors with an iron grasp. It was Dalmatian himself, the enraged head of the Pecto Society. The victim begged for mercy, choking on his own horror. With one move, the leader crushed the poor man's skull, flooding the floor with blood. The bloodied killer announced his name, and the hall was struck as if by thunder. He ordered the mysterious guest to come out of the hiding place, sensing his presence. The companion shuddered from shock, but the young man did not even raise his eyebrows. While the crowd tried to break free from the escape, the bandit promised to turn the evening into a massacre. Armed guards tightly blocked all exits from the eatery. Dalmatian swore to kill every passerby until he found the target. He tightly gripped the sword, preparing to start the bloody fight. A terrifying shadow loomed over the next victim, who was already saying goodbye to life. The partner wanted to blow up the establishment to save himself, but the boy stubbornly continued eating. The man grabbed for a weapon. He could not allow the innocent to die. The young man intercepted his hand with an iron grip and ordered him to stay calm. He explained the enemy did not come for them and pointed to the balcony on the second floor. There stood a blue-haired stranger, watching the chaos with irony. The blue-haired woman on the balcony irritably dismissed all the absurd accusations. She dispelled the rumors about the visit of the bandit's son to her establishment. Dalmatian clenched the hilt of his weapon in a frenzy of rage. With a devastating blow, he smashed the supports, accusing the woman of crippling the air. Pekshan deftly slipped away from the attack, preparing an instant response. She leapt above the enemy and struck a painful blow, stunning the witnesses. The woman introduced herself coldly, the legendary Pekshan, leader of the Yangtze bandits. One of the 12 rulers of the river states gracefully landed after the lunge. The formidable clan leader froze in shock. The mythical warrior turned out to be a woman. Pekshan calmly sheathed her sword, offering the enemy to lay down his weapon. But Dao refused. He was not going to forgive the humiliation of his son. The woman just shrugged. She was interested only in the killer of her subordinate. She arrived to find the unknown person who had disrupted her secret operation. Pekshan assured that she had not seen Dao's son after discussing the details of the deal. The subordinate's whisper made the enraged clan leader suddenly change tactics. Dao lowered his sword, promising to personally verify every word of the guest. On condition of confirming the truth, he guaranteed official reconciliation and respect. The crowd sighed with relief, believing in the peaceful resolution of the conflict. But Dao's next order made everyone shudder. A new wave of horror struck again. He demanded cutting out the tongues of everyone who dared to spread rumors about his family. The subordinates instantly drew their blades and began a bloody massacre. The hall was flooded with blood. The bandit leader silently watched the brutal slaughter. Disgust towards the allies prevented her from intervening. Lord Choi's order was law. She did not understand why the master needed this unknown killer alive. Pekshan irritably dashed from the spot, preparing to personally teach the insolent bastard a lesson. Meanwhile, the young man and his partner calmly discussed the distribution of forces in the city. Next to them, brutally beaten opponents groaned in pools of blood. The dark-haired warrior suggested removing one of the persistent enemies from the path. After a hearty dinner, he hinted that it was time for a night raid. The boy agreed to act according to the usual scheme, a quiet entry and a maximally loud finale. The partner thoughtfully covered his mouth, brooding over a new daring idea. A cunning smile spread across his face. The plan was ready. The young man only tilted his head in confusion, not understanding his companion's idea. The Pekto residence was drowned in mourning. The wind fluttered the funeral wreaths near the entrance. Rumors spread through the city about the suicide of Dao's son and chaos within the clan. Passers-by whispered about the death of the scoundrel, fearing the wrath of the bandits. Suddenly, one of the townspeople shouted indignantly upon encountering a vagabond. The heroes changed into rags, carrying heavy wooden structures on their shoulders. The residence guards watched warily as suspicious poor people approached the entrance. The companion checked the boy's readiness to act alone one last time. A spear blocked the way. The guard demanded silence during the mourning. Instead of excuses, the youth rushed at the guard with a fierce scream. The frightened soldier barely managed to dodge the sudden attack. The boy breathed heavily, showing uncontrolled anger. He swung a huge ladle and poured a portion of filth onto the enemy. After the devastating blow, the cleaner exhaled heavily. The guard screamed in disgust and convulsively tried to wipe the filth off himself. The second guard pinched his nose and ordered the stinking guests to go to the restrooms immediately. Despite doubts, the dirty workers were decided to be let inside. The partner brazenly suggested a search, but the guard waved them off with disgust. The heroes were ordered to stay in the backyard so as not to spoil the guests' appearance. Clamping their noses against the stench, the soldiers let the saboteurs onto the territory. The companion only smiled. These killers were far more terrible than any filth. But the young man warned a real trial awaited ahead. It became clear it was about a dangerous meeting with the river bandit. It was necessary to find out how closely the butcher was connected to the Pekto clan. The boy quoted wisdom about teachers: they can be found in any crowd. He suddenly shouted, thereby attracting the attention of random bandits in the yard. The victims were chosen. These scoundrels were to become their first teachers. The guard's shock turned into panic. A terrifying red aura covered the disguised saboteurs. A short Emda, the young man disdainfully poked the unconscious enemy with a stick. Luck smiled on them. The leader and the butcher settled in opposite parts of the residence. Time to act. Ahead was a crowd of armed guards. Seeing their beaten comrade, the enemies quickly drew their blades. Target distribution: west to the young man, east to his companion. He who calls to hell and the master of plum blossoms prepared for battle. A flash and the bodies of the guards scattered under a bloody rain. The survivors panicked and rushed to flee through the narrow corridor. Blood on the walls testified death had already caught up with the cowards. The boy raced headlong over the tiled roofs, fleeing from the pursuit. The path was blocked by an ambush on the ground. The enemies were already celebrating victory. Icy contempt and a flow of energy instead of words. A devastating strike with the staff, and a black wave shattered everything around. The boy softly landed on the bridge amid bloody debris. The red-haired captain with a fiery aura immediately recognized the legendary Sanshin. Accusation of murder and an order to attack all at once. The youth swiftly deflected a barrage of blows, balancing in the air. The taste of his own blood on his lips, the fight was dragging on. The staff struck the railing, breaking the trajectory of movement. An acrobatic somersault over the heads of confused enemies. The enemies froze in shock. The boy jumped straight into the river. The leader triumphed, considering the jump into the water a fatal mistake. But the silence of the water was shattered by a powerful underwater explosion. A column of water and a frightened carp rushed straight into the face of the guard. The turmoil, a geyser of blood and water, and the next enemy was swept away. The young man jumped onto the crest of the wave and washed the opponents off the bridge. Panic and screams, dirty water shattered the bridge, and the enraged hero landed among the ruins. Black energy flared in the hero's eyes, preparing the final strike. A mighty wave swept away the last guards and tore them into the unstoppable current of the river. The commander barely scrambled to the shore and fiercely prowled in search of the missing enemy. The subordinates report shocked. The scout broke into the main house. The leader's face twisted with horror. There stood the clan chief himself. The guards looked around the ruins of the bridge in confusion, not understanding the scale of the disaster. One of the survivors pointed north and sent the pursuit on a false path. The commander believed in the escape through the mountains and ordered to immediately catch the violator. He rushed forward, hoping to save the remnants of his reputation. A real young man from the shadows watched the futile efforts of the enemy squads. The leader comforted himself with the illusion that a wounded enemy is easy to catch. His confident threats shattered against the icy calm of the hero. The young man stood before the main building, trapped by the moan of ghostly shadows. He dismantled the enemy's spells, sorting through the structure of the 8 gates. The enemy's mysterious muttering finally took on a clear meaning for him. Before the boy, a complex magical seal of 64 trigrams flared up. He confidently stepped into the center of the formation, recognizing every deadly trap. The illusory traps of the tiger and snake could not confuse the experienced warrior. Step by step, he approached the exit of the labyrinth, sensing the finale. The barrier fell ahead, loomed the ominous tower of the gates of life. Heavy doors opened and released thick gray smoke into the night. A hoarse voice came from the darkness. It made the hero become alert. The figure of Dao Moshin blazed with a bloody aura. He craved personal revenge. Crying bloody tears, the leader swore to sacrifice the youth to his son. A heavy sword plunged into the ground under the weight of unbearable paternal pain. The boy silently listened to the enemy's speech about the tragedy of the lost lineage. Dao's frantic scream shattered the silence. There were no words for his grief. The youth's dark energy flared in response to the opponent's despair. The enraged father charged into attack, putting all his anger into the strike. The weapon struck a dazzling flash, and the decisive battle ended in an instant. The head of Pecto could not believe his eyes. The youth was deflecting strikes of peak power. The giant brought down his sword, but the boy's staff remained unshaken. Sparks and red energy covered everything around, tearing the air with wild tension. The shockwave scattered the stone and shattered the street lamps to pieces. Beneath the fighter's feet, the ground parted, opening a deep crater. The bloodied leader fiercely pressed the defense of the petty scoundrel. With a roar of "Die!" he delivered a blow of dazzling power. Steel grazed flesh, the youth's hand splattered the cobblestones with blood. Dao Moshin triumphed, feeling that the enemy's end was very near. He smiled, fiercely confident in his victory. But the boy only smiled. The blood on the giant's face hissed and began to smoke. A wild scream of pain tore the silence. The poison began to burn the eyes. The youth mockingly said that Dao's son died from the same trap. The memory of the child turned the leader into a true demon of rage. The hero soared into the air, preparing a devastating counterstrike. Streams of energy crashed down on the giant, turning everything into ruins. Blood flowed thickly from the wounded eye of the bandit cornered. He barely managed to shield himself with his sword from the barrage of fierce blows. Yes, Dao realized, the youth deliberately exposed himself to the strike for the sake of the poison. The leader saw only a dangerous provocation in his actions. Casting aside doubts, he spun the sword in a devastating energy vortex. Waves of pure power began to cut through the space around the fighters. The youth noticed an open zone and rushed into the final attack. The black staff filled with deadly power and unwavering determination. The lethal slash of the weapon almost touched the enemy's head. Suddenly time froze, a premonition of death pierced the boy's body. The survival instinct worked faster than reason. At the last moment, he changed trajectory, slipping away from the invisible blade. Blue-haired Baekhyun landed on the roof, and Dao remembered their bloody deal again. The young man realized he was lured into a double trap that the enemies had prepared so carefully. The bandit cold-bloodedly suggested cutting the boy's body in half. The hero instantly recognized her as the legendary Thousand Heads. The woman recalled an old debt for the water market, justifying why she appeared. A blue aura enveloped the killer, who was not used to leaving accounts unsettled. The young man raged. The fight with two masters was becoming deadly dangerous. Angry Dao demanded that the accomplice immediately come down and stop babbling. A brief confrontation between the leaders only added tension to the air. Baekhyun took off from the spot and turned into a swift white lightning. She dashed down and, crossing the blades, delivered a strike for a cross attack. With a maniacal smile, the bandit desired only the heads of the three-level abyss. The black staff blocked the strike amid the roar of sparks and the screech of metal. The boy restrained the onslaught, pushing aside unnecessary thoughts for survival. Baekhyun mocked, demanding true power, not empty rumors. Another devastating blow forced the youth to use all resources for defense. Dao Moshin intervened in the fight, releasing a beam of hellish energy. The leader Pekto fiercely demanded that no one interfere with him, personally executing the upstart. Despite the quarrel, both monsters simultaneously fell upon the exhausted boy. The bandit mocked the predetermined moves of her clumsy ally. In the raging chaos, the youth created a black vortex and forced the woman to retreat. "Got you," an icy voice sounded a moment before Baekhyun's defense collapsed. A lightning-fast kick sent the stunned banditess into a prolonged flight. The boy broke through the barrier, ignoring the giant's powerless rage. Dao Moshin cleaved the space with gigantic waves of red death. He laughed madly, considering the youth's desperate resistance merely a futile amusement. Suddenly the floor exploded with black spikes, cutting short the bandit's triumph. The hero soared above the enemy with a blazing staff, preparing the final verdict. The youth descended from the sky, activating a bloody magical seal. Dao Moshin met the attack with a mighty whirlwind of steel and fury. The giant threw all his immense power into the swing, stretching every muscle to the limit. The boy maneuvered deftly, simultaneously blocking the strikes of both masters. The banditess smiled fiercely, certain that the trap had finally closed. She shattered the stones beneath her feet, denying the enemy even a thought of escape. The explosion of energy blinded everyone, and the maniacal zeal of Baekhyun tore the boundaries. Suddenly the target disappeared, leaving the killers in complete stupor. The young man rushed into the night sky and froze against the backdrop of the cold moon. The rapid fall was interrupted by a devastating blow to the face of the blinded giant. The leader's face burst into a bloody mess under the weight of the unexpected attack. The hero elegantly retreated, while the enemy barely stood on his feet. The head of Pekto spat blood and proclaimed the beginning of a true massacre. The rumble of his voice split the earth, summoning the entire elite of the sect. From the wild roar, the bandit covered her ears, and the boy felt dozens of shadows approaching him. The best killers of the sect instantly responded to the call of their enraged master. 32 Death Masters gathered around the young man in a tight circle. The boy gripped the staff tighter, calmly calculating the chances of the doomed enemies. He ironically called this slaughter too heavy a walk after dinner. A wave of mercenaries surged forward with a single craving for blood. The black staff cut through the crowd, covering the cobblestones with mangled bodies. The deadly countdown started, each blow drained the elite fighter's strength. He hurled the weapon straight into the enemy's face, not stopping his bloody tally. The guards rushed at the unarmed boy and considered it their only chance. But the hero's fists filled with destructive magical power. He tore flesh and crushed bones with incredible cruelty using his bare hands. Catching the staff in flight, the youth coldly recorded another death. The blood-soaked monster towered over the battlefield, instilling primal terror in the hearts of the survivors. One of the cowards ran away as soon as he realized the futility of resistance. But Dao Moshin personally cut the deserter in half, showing no mercy for weakness. Dao Moshin angrily swore to kill everyone who would disgrace his sacred revenge for his son. He harshly reminded, in his hands were not only the lives of the fighters but also the fates of their families. Cornered and desperate, the killers twitched while the young man silently watched this pitiful spectacle. Suddenly, a relaxed voice of a partner sounded. He suggested stopping the futile waste of time. The cult leader went mad with rage as soon as he heard the insolence from another psycho. Under a rain of pink petals on the battlefield appeared an elegant warrior in red and black attire. With his hair loose, he confidently walked through the ranks of the stunned guard. The man adjusted his collar and with light irony apologized for his delay. His blade flashed red. The flowers really needed time to bloom. The young man irritably blurted out why the partner appeared much later than agreed. The excuses about the subtleties of gardening were met by the boy only with icy, disapproving silence. The swordsman noticed that the hero was exhausted and finally told him to take an interest in the flowers. The massive Dao sword sliced through the air. He immediately recognized the legendary, deadly plum blossom. The master ironically mocked the giant for cowardice and the habit of hiding behind the backs of subordinates. The enraged leader threw a one-armed freak at the opponent, trying to calm his own anger. The hero sarcastically replied, "To clean up such a pile of crap, one hand was quite enough for him." Standing shoulder to shoulder, the swordsman cheerfully declared that his warm-up was just starting. He suggested splitting up and promised to personally take on the sect leader. Skillfully blocking the bandit's attack, the man instantly hid both the healer and the blue-haired beast. The warriors rushed into the attack, leaving behind only red traces and a promise to survive. Baekhyun wondered how the righteous hero could unite with a rogue from the three abysses. The man laughed. He had never been righteous and even dreamed of leading a bandit gang. The bandit fiercely swung an axe, demanding to stop this bloody chaos. The partner held back the blow, explaining that he was simply cleansing the world of the atrocities of the Brazen Clan. His gaze became deadly serious. These creatures deserved nothing but immediate death. Baekhyun unexpectedly agreed, although the role of Dao's ally truly annoyed her. A blue aura flared up. The woman cunningly suggested to the swordsman to change sides. But the short nope instantly put an end to her attempts to negotiate. The swordsman revealed the secret of the turmoil in the river state, shocking the bandit Baekhyun. Cunning hints at the traveler's knowledge drove the woman mad. She raged in helplessness. He suggested that her exile was only a fragment of the mentor's dirty game for power. A direct accusation of a risky adventure made Baekhyun freeze in shock. The woman desperately realized the old teacher's treachery and her own recklessness. A cry of rage shattered the silence. The bandit desperately tried to deny the truth. The blue aura embraced the blade of her axe, preparing a deadly strike. Baekhyun declared her true goal: bloody revenge for the fallen subordinate. The swordsman merely smiled, showing her voluntary renunciation of the title of leader. The woman rushed into attack, demanding to immediately stop the unnecessary chatter. The swordsman ironically admitted he was just stalling time to restore his inner strength. A swift clash of weapons tore out, a dazzling flash and tore down a rain of sakura petals. The shockwave shook the air, shifting the action to the main battlefield. Dalmatian walked over mountains of corpses, despising his own broken army. He crushed the face of a dead guard under his boot with a disgusting crunch. The young man watched this madness, and in his eyes burned an icy hatred. Before his eyes appeared the image of faithful Ildo. He accepted death for honor. The boy coldly asked about the fate of the old warrior. His loyalty knew no bounds. The head of Pekto did not even mention the name of the one so easily condemned to torment. The story of the torture of Ildo's family and the slavery of his daughters revealed the true face of the tyrant. The young man clenched his teeth in rage, regretting the tragic choice of the noble warrior. Dalmatian laughed out loud, challenging the dog who dared to resist. The black staff flared with red energy. The tyrant's sentence was declared. The devastating flaming sword struck the hero, promising a swift death. Steel cut into wood in a whirlwind of magical sparks and thunder. Deadly trails of power sliced through the air in a fierce dance of death. The brutal might of the giant threw the boy back, confirming the advantage in strength. The young man maneuvered skillfully, but a sudden punch knocked him off his feet and froze him in place. A series of devastating attacks tore through space, forcing the hero to defend with his last strength. The boy struck back mercilessly, leaving deep bloody wounds on the giant's body. Fire burst from beneath the earth and forced the Pekto leader to retreat under the pressure of the element. The young man landed and admitted the enemy's strength slightly exceeded his expectations. He felt the falseness. The giant desperately tried to hide something behind his fury. The view of the tower put everything in its place. The enemy was hiding nothing anymore. Dao was simply protecting the structure with his own body, becoming the last living barrier. A cunning smile blossomed on the boy's face. The secret became obvious to him. The question about ghosts of the past made the sect leader shudder from hidden horror. The young man called him pathetic for clinging to the shadow of his dead son. Dao growled in response, "A father's duty is to keep the child close even into hell." A black aura covered the hero as soon as he ordered the enemy to freeze forever in place. Absolute terror froze in the giant's gaze before the face of inevitable disaster. Red energy pulsed in the staff, preparing a devastating finale for the tyrant. A bloody strike blinded Dao, while the boy relentlessly broke through to the entrance. The black red dragon broke free and pinned the beaten enemy to the ground. The explosion of energy cleared the way, demolishing the last line of defense of the Pecto Society. The sect leader fell to his knee, realizing the true target of this devastating attack. Cold sweat appeared on Dao. The young man was not hitting him, but the tower itself. The staff shattered the stone and, dipping the humiliated leader into a thick cloud of dust, cleared his path with a strike. Blinded by blood, the killer vainly prowled in search of his elusive target. While Dao writhed in agony, the hero calmly stepped over the threshold of the protected building. Inside, there was semi-darkness, only dozens of memorial candles cut through it. Feeling movement behind his back, the young man instantly delivered a sweeping blow with the staff. The weapon smashed the altar under the desperate scream of the completely broken father. The boy froze in shock as the dust settled, and a terrible, sick truth burst out. With disgust he said, Dao Moshin was a madman, completely crazy. Through the smoke of incense appeared a luxurious table, set with exquisite dishes. Behind him sat the beheaded corpse of his son, placed for a gruesome banquet dinner. The young man shuddered with disgust while Dao begged not to touch his child. The dying leader blocked the way, trying to save the bloody illusion of life. In response, he heard only a contemptuous, "Gee." The hero took the last step to the altar. The young man drew his sword, preparing to put the final point in this slaughter. Dao Moshin screamed frantically about respect for the dead as soon as he saw the threat to his son's body. The boy dryly advised to respect the living first and ordered the enemy to immediately drop his weapon. Bleeding profusely, the giant appeared and caught the hero's partner by surprise, so he froze in amazement. With trembling hands, he thrust the sword into the stone. The clan leader thought only about the heir's funeral. Suddenly, the weapon burst into flames. It was the last, desperate trump card of the killer. The young man acknowledged with disgust. The enemy's prudence was only a cover for a new attack. Dao sighed heavily, dismissing all rumors about his glorious past. He remembered his youth and the legendary sword king, the one who once threw him at his feet. A golden glow flooded the hall. The old monster was preparing for his greatest reception. The hero shuddered, realizing that the legendary steel chi had appeared before him. Engulfed in flames, the tyrant took a stance, promising the power that once conquered kings. The young man understood. The enemy was squeezing out the last remnants of life for a single strike. With eyes white from rage, Dao rushed forward, dreaming of saving his child. But the boy only coldly stated the giant had no chances left. Suddenly, the youth froze. He felt the enemy's magic begin to rapidly collapse. Black blood gushed from Dao's chest, stopping his attack with unbearable pain. The boy remembered the poison in his own blood had long been eating the tyrant from within. He disdainfully said that all this pomp was just a futile waste of time. Dao's strength dissipated, leaving him alone with the fear of death. The youth relentlessly approached the fallen enemy, emitting a deadly aura. The giant only helplessly gulped air, hearing his name as a verdict. A terrible whirlwind of bloody energy enveloped the hero before the final stroke. A devastating blow tore the tyrant's body apart, washing the floor with fountains of blood. The polluted hands of the sect leader fell powerless, marking the end of his era. The beaten and humiliated leader hoarsely begged the victor for one last favor. The blood-soaked father prayed only for a chance to bury his own child himself. The youth silently watched the killer's agony, showing not a drop of compassion. He agreed to send him to hell so that Dao would eternally repent before his victims there. Dao Moshin bled while the shadows of dead souls triumphed over his agony. The sins of the past finally consumed the tyrant, tearing him to pieces in the last darkness. With his last effort, the killer lifted the lifeless body of his son, clutching him in an embrace of unbearable pain. A bloodied hand gently touched the pale face. The father was saying goodbye to his only child. He was leading his son to the altar, dreaming that at least in the afterlife there would be peace. In the raging flame, the giant wished the boy happiness, the kind he had not known in life. The multi-tiered tower turned into a gigantic bonfire, while the young man walked out of the ruins alone. The partner met him in the shadow, noticing the hero's slight delay. The boy reported dryly about the bandits. Escape. The target slipped from his hands. The companion philosophically admitted, love for one's own child does not give the right to destroy others' lives. He called the giant a fool, but the young man sharply interrupted. The time for sentiment was over. The plan changed. Ahead was not only the exposure of the bandits, something much larger emerged. The young man was going to provoke the entire alliance and arrange its complete annihilation. The partner laughed again, convinced of his leader's boundless madness. Dawn met the heroes at the gate of the residence, opening the way to a new, even bloodier war.